The meeting is live now on YouTube.
Thank you very much, Alison. I'd like to welcome you all tonight to the Community Regeneration and Environment Overview and Scrutiny meeting. Do we have any apologies at all for Michael?
I haven't received any, Chair, but if we get any during the meeting, I will record them.
That's fine. Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest from anyone? I'll take that as a no. Any urgent items of business? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, I think it's this SPD for Russell train station. I've been involved with the a plan. I'm a ward councillor.
That's
so,
fine. No.
Yeah, when this plan been developed, I've been involved in meetings and everything.
That's fine. Michael, I don't think there'll like to be any problems with that, will there?
No, that's perfectly acceptable, Chair. Yeah. There's no personal prejudicial interest there.
No, I didn't think so. Any urgent items of business, please? No. Minutes of the last meeting. I've read through them. I'm glad to see that the reports are here tonight that we've asked for. So I'm happy to move them as chair. Is anyone happy to second them? Councillor West, I can see you putting your hand up. So are you happy to second them, Councillor West?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Has anyone got any matters arising from the minutes? No? Brilliant. So we'll get to the first item then. So the challenges on climate change. I notice that Mark is here and I notice that Councillor Rowbotham's here. So nice to see you both again. What I'll do is obviously I'll bring Mark in and then I'll bring in Councillor Rowbotham after that, if that's okay. Right, so kick off then.
Thanks, Chair. By the way, Alison, would you be able to do my slides, or do we need to do that, or can I just talk to the presentation?
You can present your own slides.
Can I?
I've enabled the share screen.
Right. All right. Okay. Yep. Has that come up?
Yes.
Yes, Mark. Thank you.
Right. I've only got a couple of slides, Chair, and the portfolio holder, Councillor Rowbotham's here as well. So I think she'll come into the discussion at a certain point. So I'll introduce it, and then Sarah can comment on that. Just in terms of the last meeting, kind of focused on the governance arrangements and some of the scenarios for climate change. This is just an update in terms of the work that's taking place. I thought, first of all, we should talk about the Climate Emergency Working Group, which was proposed originally in the Director of Neighbourhood report last January. That's now been established, and its initial meeting was held on the 28th of January. It was kind of a formal meeting in terms of the membership of the group and in terms of reference and some planning issues, but the group has now been established. The process for nominating community representatives to the group is still to be determined, so that's an item to do. I should probably bring in Councillor Rowbotham to talk about this. We agreed that we would hold one-to-one meetings with each member of the working group to discuss their ideas and priorities, and we've held a couple of those, but I don't know whether, Sarah, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, we've had a few of those, and we've had 3 so far. The intention is to go and speak to every member to garner their enthusiasm, I think is the right expression. Yeah, but those will continue, and we will have met everybody before the next meeting.
And the next meeting's for the 18th of March, and it will focus on community engagement and consultation. And we held a meeting with Kerry Bertram, who I know is on the meeting tonight, from Action Together, to do some planning for that. So we're going to try and use the cooperative engagement toolkit as a framework. And we've also got an academic from Manchester University who's an expert on citizens, juries and assemblies, to come and talk to us about their role in engaging people in climate change consultations. So that's due to take place on the 18th of March. Again, Sarah, did you want to say anything about that before?
No, that's going to be
okay.
what we're hoping to achieve from that working group is agreement, a consensus around the model that we will use to engage with people around the agenda. And as I said last time, that's about reaching out to people who are, really passionate about the climate emergency concerns, but equally those people who are deniers, climate change deniers, and to really gain an understanding about what people's views are across the borough. And we hope that by the end of that meeting we will have consensus and we'll be able to roll it on as soon as we possibly can by the end of March.
The next stage will also be to develop the climate change action plan, which I think will obviously be of interest to Overview and Scrutiny. And whilst that's still in development, that will come before the working group at a future meeting, and then presumably that'll be something that we can come back to Overview and Scrutiny about in due course. I should also mention, just in terms of the working group, a couple of things. We have as well now got a landing page on the website for climate change to try and pull together resources. It does need developing, but at least now you can go on to the council's website and there is a page there that sets out, the various strategies and plans and links various items and work streams from the council's website itself. And we are also subject to an internal audit based on the preparations for climate change. So that kicks off next week as well in terms of whether we've met the proposals that were in the Director of Neighbourhoods report last January. So those were the two other things. If I go on to the work streams, I've tried to focus on some of the main ones, Chair. Right? There's quite a lot going on, but I thought these would probably be of most interest to Overview and Scrutiny. In terms of appointments, the post of Climate Change and Sustainability Project Manager has been appointed. That's myself. I was appointed and took up post on the 1st of December, so I've been in post just short of 3 months now. That was a key commitment, again, in the Director of Neighbourhoods report in January. We've also appointed in Technical and Building Services an energy officer, which I think, again, may be of interest to Overview and Scrutiny. That the post holder takes up the position in April, but that's partly in response to concerns I think Overview and Scrutiny raised previously about procurement and energy policy. So that it's partly in response to that, but also to try and coordinate the authority's response around its own estate and its own buildings. And hopefully that post will be an investor save post. It should save the council money, not only carbon emissions, but obviously in terms of potentially money from energy and consumption in terms of buildings. The second item probably I did refer to last time because we were bidding for this, is the Public Sector Decarbonisation Scheme, which is a government scheme that's set up. It's £1 billion for investing in decarbonising heat in local authority and public estate buildings. Rochdale submitted the second largest bid in Greater Manchester. It was a consortium bid through the Greater Manchester Combined Authority for 20 public buildings and schools right across the borough. Our bid was for 11.1 million. We will hear it'd be great to come tonight and say that we'd heard about the grant award. We understand from GMCA that Greater Manchester is getting a significant award through Salix and the government for this scheme, and therefore Rochdale should be awarded a significant amount as well. I'd like to come tonight and say we've got the full amount, but we will only get verbal confirmation of that tomorrow, and then the written confirmation on Friday. So we should be able to say something about it tomorrow, but I don't want to put my mortgage on it just yet. But we're expecting a grant award for that, which will be an important one for public buildings. In terms of carbon literacy, we have been in touch with the Carbon Literacy Project. I submitted a report to Greater Manchester Combined Authority on options for rolling out carbon literacy for the 10 districts, because we need to catch up in Rochdale in terms of commitments around awareness and behaviour change for our staff. The Greater Manchester Combined Authority are looking at developing an e-learning module for all of the 10 districts, but that we could use in Rochdale as well, which we could host on Me Learning, which would cover the first stage of carbon literacy, which is the science of climate change. So GMCA have agreed that they will pick that up on behalf of the 10 districts. We're also looking at rolling out some train-the-trainer sessions, again supported through GMCA, to try and train up some key people within the authority so that we're able to roll out carbon literacy training ourselves. And we're in discussions, but obviously it's a mammoth task in terms of the total number of staff that the council employs, never mind other stakeholders. But we do want to kind of try and develop carbon literacy training for kind of key strategic areas of the authority. My thoughts initially have been around, you know, RDA, strategic housing, but there will be other areas that we need to do that as well. So we're progressing on that. Another key one, Chair, is local area energy planning, which we are working again with the 10 Greater Manchester districts to develop energy plans for each of the districts. Hopefully that will be in by October of this year. And that is a complete review of things like demand, of where there are going to be key requirements in terms of the energy system for the borough in terms of distributed energy. And that's being supported through the Greater Manchester Combined Authority and the Energy Systems Catapult. So that will be coming back as well. And linked to that is a wider review of land and building assets, which we're involved in again with GMCA, to look at the potential for the development of renewable energy projects across the borough. We're also looking at developing a carbon reporting tool. We at the moment we report against a national indicator that's not used anymore, National Indicator 185, which was scrapped in 2008, but it's still been used for carbon reporting for local authorities. But we're proposing to use the LGA and local partnerships carbon reporting tool. And so that will give us potentially baseline carbon emissions and a performance reporting tool for the council's building and assets, not for the wider borough. We still need to have a look at that. So we're in progress with that as well. We're involved in other areas. Strategic housing are involved in the government's Green Homes grant scheme. So there's a local authority delivery programme, and there's a second stage of that now that the council's been successful in getting a grant award. So there are a number of schemes that are being developed with E.ON, who are the framework contractor for that, for the borough. And we've been looking at other funding opportunities through things like the Greater Manchester Environment Fund, which is being set up again through the Combined Authority, looking at funding through the Heat Networks Delivery Unit. We've been involved, Petrus Community are submitting a bid for green social prescribing. So we've been trying to support that. And we've also been in discussions with some potential private sector partners to look at where there are opportunities for investment in the borough. An example of that is with Scottish and Southern Energy. So we've been in some dialogue with them about where they could potentially help the authority with some of its key projects. So those were some of the actions and projects, Chair. And finally, just in terms of engagement with key stakeholders, we've been trying to build up networks and communication and discussions with key stakeholders across the borough and other partners who we want to bring in on board. So we've worked with RDA with a view to setting up a green business group. We've got the business ambassador on the climate emergency working group, but we're looking to set up a green business group through RDA as well to support that work. Held meetings with the Business Growth Hub and with Groundwork to discuss how they might support the authority in terms of climate change, which has got some useful potential resources there. Had a meeting with Middleton Cooperating as well to discuss the potential for the development of the community energy sector. We know we need to develop community energy across the borough. So Middleton Cooperating have got one of their work streams is around energy. So we're hoping to support them in terms of that, the development of that work strand. We've had meetings with Action Together. We had myself and the chair, a portfolio holder, held a meeting with Extinction Rebellion, which I'll let Sarah talk about. Meetings with Local Energy Northwest and Petrus Community. And again, with the Greater Manchester Combined Authority, we're active there. The portfolio holders on the Green City Board, and I attend the 5-year plan Climate Emergency Officer Group meeting on behalf of the council. And again, I'll bring Councillor Rowbottom in to to talk about the Green City Board and maybe our meeting with Extinction Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion were pussycats. They're clearly a passionate group of people whose energy and enthusiasm we really need to embrace, because they represent all aspects of our community and our residents who really feel, who are very passionate, as I said, and serious about the climate change agenda. We've got an awful lot to learn from them, and I think embracing their energy is really important. The Green City Board has quite a broad agenda, and it only meets every couple of months, but the executive members there have recently written to Greater Manchester Pension Fund for discussions around investment in fossil fuels, which is going to be an interesting agenda item going forward. We also had conversations about how we contribute to the government's white paper, and as a collective force, what our responses are in relation to the government's suggestions around their green action plan. Which actually reminds me, and I can see Paul Moore's on the call, there's a planning white paper as well, Mark Robinson maybe as well. It might be worth a conversation with the chair of Scrutiny around what the council would like to contribute in relation to planning legislation and housing regulations. Because as a council, we don't have much say over the building's green credentials, that the new housing green credentials of properties that are built in our area. And the planning white paper, I don't know whether to what extent the planning white paper includes guidance for local authorities around all of that, but that might be something that Scrutiny wants to consider, because as a council, we've only got a little bit of wriggle room around insisting that developers meet a certain standard around the properties that they build. And it just might be of interest to this committee. I'm about to go on a 2-day local government association leadership course around around climate change and sustainability, and I think it is worth mentioning that the local government association are really supportive of a lot of the initiatives that are taking place in Rochdale. I know some people don't seem to think that the solar panel bins are of any particular value, but actually what it demonstrates is that we're a forward-thinking authority who is prepared to test out new initiatives, to assess them, to see whether they work, to gather performance information around how they are able to not only save the council money, but equally contribute towards saving the planet. And as a new initiative, we're able to share our learning with other authorities certainly across Greater Manchester, but definitely across the Northwest. The same for the e-scooters. We're just about to go out to procurement around some e-scooters. And again, that's going to be a carefully monitored initiative, which will run people from the station into the town centre. We're hoping, if that's successful, then e-scooters can be used on some of our industrial sites where there's no public transport, and so discourage people encourage people to take public transport to work and then use their e-scooters across Stake Hill, for example. So those are just two small examples of how I think the council is being innovative in its approach. Because the agenda is so massive, it's easy to say that we will plant a lot of trees, and we are definitely going to plant a lot of trees, but actually there's so much more to it than that. And I think, I know Mark didn't want to jinx it, but the public sector decarbonisation is going to be huge. And it's such a shame that we didn't get the results of that application today rather than yesterday, rather than tomorrow, because believe me, both Mark and I would probably have been drinking far too much Prosecco, because for the borough and for the town, it's real. We were really aspirational in our applications, and fingers crossed it does appear as though we're going to be successful. And I know I shouldn't be jinxing it either, but we'll be jumping up. I'm really hoping we're jumping up and down with that tomorrow. Yeah, I'll leave it at that, Chair. I suppose the only other thing I wanted to say, Chair, is that you know, there really is an opportunity for a separate scrutiny committee to because the agenda is so big, it covers health and it covers this committee. It's whether you think it's valuable enough to create a separate scrutiny opportunity a couple of times a year to really bottom down some of these agendas.
I must admit, I do completely agree. It is a very big agenda, isn't it? Especially the climate emergency. But what I think Mark was saying at the beginning is we do need to get our own affairs in order, in especially our council buildings, and to do with our procurement. We know we need to be putting our first foot forward, basically, before we start looking at the wider Rochdale and what we can do there. Now, it's great to be aspirational, and I think that we will get there eventually, but we need to get our own affairs in order first. I'm going to bring in Councillor Besford.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for this report. I would echo what Councillor Robotham has just said about the idea of a separate scrutiny for this, because there's so much stuff to pack in. I mean, and I appreciate some of the correspondence I've had outside of this meeting, finding out about the 11,500 new trees in the Pennines, the fleet of electric vehicles, the new solar farm in Haywood. I mean, there's so much that needs to be flagged, recognised, and also considered by a group such as additional scrutiny. My question, though, is actually related to, at the moment, a lot of that was around working with the public sector and working with the council. But I'm really aware that over 97% of our emissions in the borough are not directly from the local authority. So possibly not want to go into a lot of detail now, but I imagine will be top of the agenda if there is a new scrutiny set up. But I wonder if either Mark or Sarah could just touch on how we're going to tackle commercial emissions and how that's going to look at as well.
I think we could both throw things at you, but we're both. I saw one of our big initial meetings this week has been with a guy called Richard from Crystal Doors, and Crystal Doors is a local company who are absolutely passionate, just undersells it. He is a serious ambassador for carbon neutrality and how businesses can work towards becoming carbon neutral. We've got Richard on the working group. We want Richard. There's also a business ambassadors group, and we're setting up a series of forums with Richard at the forefront, which will support, so not only the Rochdale bid, for example, but there's a bid process about to be set up at Stakehill. He's working really closely with Foot Locker, and hopefully at some point we'll be able to tell you exactly what the initiatives are with Foot Locker. It doesn't feel as though it's appropriate for me to tell you now because it's business sensitive, but we're really aware that we're only one small part, and that actually the big businesses across the town will have a significant contribution to make. But if I can, you know, I want to reassure you, Councillor, that we're on it, we're aware of it, and that there are, you know, definitely things in place with really good champions. We're really lucky to have Richard Halligan as part of our working group. Do you want to add anything else, Mark?
Yeah, I was going to say, absolutely, Councillor Bestwood. You know, the vast majority, 97% of carbon emissions are not directly attributable to council activity. We are looking at those areas. I think the local area energy plan work, it will feed into that, because I've shared some of work that we've done in Rochdale around things like large scale retrofit, just in some strategy papers about how we're going to deliver that. 93,000 properties across the borough. That's a significant target of decarbonised heat, and you know, to get those down to improve the energy efficiency rating. So that will feed into that, along with things, you know, that the demand and requirements around transport, industry and commerce, particularly, you know, some of the developments that are taking place in Rochdale. So that will feed into that. And there are other areas I know I didn't cover in my presentation, like carbon sequestration. So, for instance, there's a consultation taking place at the moment on the local nature recovery strategy, and later in the year there will be opportunities, hopefully to bid against funds at a Greater Manchester level to do projects in Rochdale that look at carbon sequestration and biodiversity projects. So we do know, and obviously there are other areas that I haven't touched on, like the Clean Air Plan, which impacts on climate change as well, which have kind of been reported to Cabinet and have been subject to discussions elsewhere. So we do appreciate it's a massive agenda, and we're not ignoring that at all. We're just trying to update overview and scrutiny as to where the things we've actually done so far.
Thank you.
Has anyone got any other questions? I must admit, I agree with what Councillor Bestford is saying and Councillor Robotham. I think we said it from the off many moons ago that this would be very, very large brief that we're actually looking at, obviously, for going forward for the climate emergency, and it does require its own scrutiny committee, I think, going forward, because it will be looking at everything across the council, basically. And I must admit, I do agree. And the one thing that I wanted to pick up from your actual presentation that you gave today as well is to do with the community energy company. It's one of the passions of mine that I did raise with Mark Robinson, and saying that we did need to push this forward. I know that Councillor Butterworth was one of the main drivers. He was a previous chair of this committee. I think it's very positive that we are looking at a cooperative like energy company or something along the lines of that, maybe linking in with like projects. I'm not saying we're doing this, but a project like Chamber House Farm to actually see if we can actually get that energy out to the people and at a fair rate as well, to combat stuff like fuel poverty. We've only got to look in Rochdale. There's very, very vulnerable people who live in Rochdale who are affected by fuel poverty. So I think going forward, that would be a brilliant project, obviously, to look into in the next scrutiny committee. Now, I don't expect you to give me an answer or a comment from that, but I do think what we do need to take forward from this, and it does need minuting as well, Michael, is that we do want to look into actually getting a scrutiny committee together to look at the climate emergency moving forward.
Chair, could I just say very briefly as well on the community energy side, I've done a paper for Middleton Cooperating on some of the options and ideas that they might want to take forward. And clearly, community energy needs to be driven grassroots rather than top down. But we are committed to try and support the development of a community energy sector across the borough. And I should have mentioned as well, in relation to Councillor Bestford's point about the climate change action plan, when that is developed, that isn't a plan for the council, that's a plan for the borough. So it should encompass a range of priorities and actions right across the borough as well. Sorry, Chair.
I was going to finish there, but I've just noticed Councillor Blundell's put his hand up. Did you want to say something, Councillor Blundell?
Yeah, it was just on some of the points that have been made about commercial. How do we get the private sector basically on board with what Mark and Sarah are doing? I just wanted to point out, actually, Greater Manchester's already quite good at this. They offer a suite of services through, I think it's called the Growth Hub. Yes. And there's, we have really good businesses in Rochdale like Crystal Doors and the like, who have put a lot of money into going green. So although there's lots of work to do, there are businesses in Rochdale that are already very good at this, and I think as well we should remember the council's already quite green. If you think of the building, the screw underneath the bus station in Rochdale and the like. Obviously, there's, like I said, we're not there yet, but I think our track record's has been good in recent years compared to a lot of our neighbours, and we should remember that.
Just to quickly come in there, John, what is it? I completely agree with what you're saying, especially to do with the growth hub. I sit on the economy scrutiny with Councillor, I forgot what his name is, Councillor Michael Holly, and he's the chair of it, and it's actually a really good committee to sit on to actually hear about what we are doing as an economy, but what we're actually doing for the green economy as well, and especially with people like from Salford University coming along and showing us what they wanted to do with greenhouses moving forward. And I think as a Greater Manchester level, I think it's like you're saying, we are supported there, and I think we are doing better than a lot of the other Greater Manchester people. So I think you are entirely right there. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Just very quickly to come back on the Growth Hub. One of the meetings I had was with the Business Growth Hub, and that was organised via RDA, and that was about how we could use their resources more effectively to support local businesses. So they kind of do an audit of energy performance for SMEs. They also look at green supply chains and trying to support businesses to develop green products. So we've started the process of trying to talk to the Growth Hub about how we can more effectively integrate that into some of our climate change work as well. So it's an important point. I didn't want to miss it, Chair.
Danny, can I just mention that the Green Homes Fund is still open? And so for residents who are suffering in relation to fuel poverty, that process is still available. So it is a difficult process to manage, and the forms are complicated, and it's not easy to get the money, but the money is still available, and support can be offered by Strategic Housing if people want to fill in, if people feel they fit the criteria and they're able to get some cash from the government at the moment. It's still open and it won't be there forever. So if elected members are aware of residents who have that concern, who are living in poverty and would benefit from that funding, then point them in that direction. I'd urge everybody to have a look.
I must admit, Sarah, we actually in Cacol, the RBH officers who run the pantry, we actually started to do the process, and we actually fill out the forms for them and send them on. So it's something that we do in our local community.
Perfect.
But it's like you're saying, it's perfect examples where we can actually broaden that out and actually look at different hubs, how we can actually do that moving forward.
Yeah.
I won't waffle on about it too much, but has anyone got anything else, or am I okay to move on? I'll take that silence that I'm all right to move on. I have to keep getting my computer to see where we're up to in the agenda today. So the next one is the impact on COVID-19 on the community and the voluntary sector.
Thanks, Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you very much, Mark. So how do you want to play this, Mark?
Anna, can I just introduce it while Kerry's putting on the presentation? Is that okay? Because I don't want to steal Kerry's thunder at all, but I just wanted to introduce it if I can. And thanks very much, Danny, for the opportunity to come along, really, because I think lots of people on this call and people listening to the YouTube channel will recognise just the fantastic role that the community and voluntary sector has played since the start of this pandemic. And if I just take you back to where we were last February and March, a year ago, when, the council and partners and the voluntary sector responded to what was an emergency crisis. And, the response from our local communities and the voluntary sector, so it's residents and people who were in groups and things, was just immense. And sort of moving from that emergency crisis response into the various support we've been having to do around the lockdowns, coming out of lockdown, going into lockdown, coming out of lockdown again, and then moving into the phase of testing, and then ultimately moving into vaccination. And then if I can say then, moving into a recovery. And I would say just finally, Danny, the work that's gone on in the last 12 months, I think puts Rochdale in a very strong position about how we can move along. And the relationships have always been good here, ever since I've been here, and I've been here a long time. The relationships with the voluntary community sector has been excellent. They have grown from strength to strength in the last 12 months. And in my view, this gives us a really good platform to move into that recovery. And whatever that means when we move hopefully out of this pandemic. And I think, Kerry will sort of run through, I think, some of that detail and some of the things that, the voluntary sector and community sector have done. And, You know, I'd just like to say publicly as a director that we could not have done what we did as a borough without the voluntary and community sector. That is a fact. And I'm sure Kerry will explain some of the things that we did do. And we continue to do that now through the testing and vaccination process that we find ourselves in. So I can't praise the voluntary and community sector enough, Danny, in it's all its guises. But if I can introduce Kerry Bertram from Action Together, who I think will run through us a short presentation. Is that okay, Kerry?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks.
Smashing. Thank you.
It's lovely to be here. I thought it would be best if I shared with you a little bit of a review of the last quarter. This picture here is a picture of a woman called Gwenda. She's been helping at our community warehouse. She's also helped set up another pantry in the borough, and her and her husband were about to go travelling. They'd both retired, about to go travelling, and then the pandemic hit. And Gwenda's a perfect example of this new kind of volunteer in the borough. So it's not just somebody who's wanting to volunteer to move them on to work, or somebody who can't work. It's people actually wanting to contribute to their communities because they've been allowed more time through COVID. So I just wanted to tell you about Gwenda first of all. But a significant priority during Q3, as Mark said, has been an ongoing COVID emergency campaign. We work with volunteers and voluntary sector organisations. So we have over 200 members who are charities, community groups, faith-based organisations and social enterprises. And we also have a volunteer brokerage scheme and an investment programme. And all of this wraps around the voluntary sector and communities to strengthen communities, particularly through the crisis. We've delivered a significant winter campaign and collaborative action through the community warehouse, which I'll tell you about in a minute. And then there's also 10GM, which is a partnership of CVSs, so a partnership of infrastructure organisations, who's been working at a Greater Manchester level to communicate the great work that's happening here in Rochdale. So just a few numbers. I'll send this report on to you, but I'm just going to pull out some exciting bits. So this quarter just gone, 49 volunteers were registered and then brokered through to 48 different opportunities. 28 voluntary sector groups were supported, and that means that they were offered development support around their funding or around their governance. 24 organisations, 24 networks took place with 105 attending. And there was a significant distribution of money. So 27,000 in just over nearly 28,000 was distributed in the last quarter. About 90,000 has been distributed to voluntary sector organisations through small grants since the beginning of the pandemic. And there were 12 successful community response applications. And then just moving on to volunteering, there's a lot of support around volunteering now. So there's wellbeing support for volunteers, there's policy support for organisations, and there's pandemic advice and guidance for the voluntary sector, both online and on a weekly drop-in call. You might recognise the person in the middle here as Mr. Tom Besford. So this is our Street Ambassador programme, which is a borough-wide programme of volunteering, and the Street Ambassadors collect doorstep donations, which support our community warehouse, which I'll tell you about in a sec. And development, so there's Wednesdays Weekly, which is our platform for training and engagement. We've delivered 22 Wednesdays Weeklies since March last year. And those include everything from cancer screening awareness, training, through to how to use online facilitation platforms, through to how to write a good funding application. So anything that the voluntary sector needs, we've generally got a training video on it or something planned. And then one of the big things that we've developed is the community warehouse. So this is a central distribution hub for food and supplies. It's at Sparth Community Centre, and Sparth Community Centre is transformed. It's full of food and nappies and baby products and sanitary products and all sorts of things that people have needed through the pandemic. And it's sort of like a voluntary sector cash and carry. So anybody in the voluntary sector can come and collect supplies and then redistribute them through their own projects. That's been supported heavily through the DEFRA funding that came into the borough. And then partnerships has continued to grow, really strong partnerships within the voluntary sector around different themes. So fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and alcohol exposed pregnancy is, there's a GM network that Rochdale lead on. Grassroots gatherings, which is our fortnightly voluntary sector get together. We usually have between 20 and 30 organisations there, and that's been going since the beginning of the pandemic. The digital tech library is up and running, just received £100,000 investment to scale that up to cover the whole borough. So if anybody needs any tech, they can borrow it through a partnership of 10 charities. There's the Volunteer and Social Action Network that supports both volunteers and volunteer involving organisations, and the Disability Forum. And that's just a few of the networks that are operating now. When we think about collaboration, the Economic Support Network is another one that's been really valuable. So that's a network of all of the organisations that support people around debt or finances or money management or benefits. And they are building they've created a tool which is to help people navigate through pathways to local offers to support them around different financial needs. And that's been in partnership with the council, Work and Skills team and others to develop that. And then the Equalities Assembly. So we held our second Equalities Assembly last October. And these topics here that we had conversations around at the Equalities Assembly, they're all chosen by communities or grassroots organisations. So they're not, you know, a new strategy is being produced, so we want to come and present about it. This thing's really affecting me and I want to talk to people about it. And in the room, we've had decision makers and councillors and elected members and voluntary sector organisations, voluntary sector leaders, volunteers, citizens, people who experience services, all in a big melting pot to talk about these big subjects that are really emotive and really powerful. The Equalities Assembly has been a great platform for that. And we've got our third one coming up in March. And then cooperative engagement, this is our Rochdale's approach to collaborating with people involving the voluntary sector. We've got a number of projects now operational with social care and children's and climate around cooperative engagement. So investment, this was just in the last quarter, we've had more money in since then, but we've done well in terms of attracting money from outside of the borough and also businesses investing in some of the project work that the voluntary sector has been working on. We've been working with Community Safety Partnership. We've raised £7,000 from residents. There's a Places Worship Reopening Fund. There's the COVID-19 grants. We've had a Forever Manchester grant as well. So a fair amount of money into the borough. And then we've coordinated and administered grants to the voluntary sector organisations. And there's just a couple of quotes here as well about some of the recipients of that funding. And then our winter support page gathered together all of the support that was available for people to give help and all of the support that was available for people to get help. And that was shared through Together Rochdale, which is the borough's multi-agency comms platform. So Rochdale Council comms, CCG comms and voluntary sector comms shared about the support that was available to people during the winter. I'm not going to go through this because it's a little bit tiny, but this is our plan for the next period. But if I just tell you about some sort of key highlights of things that are coming up. So the Equalities Assembly 3 is happening on the 16th of March. I really invite you all to come. It's really the best thing about the Equalities Assembly is having the opportunity to listen to people who you might not normally come across. There's some really interesting subjects around supporting the supporters, around mental health, around collective grief. So I'll send the link round afterwards. We're we're sort of relaunching our funding. So there'll just be one fund that the community can apply, or community organisations can apply to, but it covers lots of priorities. So it's called the Respond, Repair and Recover Fund. So we are moving into that language of recovery. And though that fund will focus on issues caused by inequality, practical things like reopening and signage, and practical support, and then thematic support. So we've got a number of themes that are really key for the voluntary sector over the next 12 months. There's also an investment in some of this thematic project work outside of grant funding. But the themes that we're focusing on are women's services, emotional health, and separately to emotional health, Black, Asian and minority ethnic specific mental health pathways. Family, community health, so that's physical health and wellbeing. Financial stuff, so the economic support networks work. Food continues to be a big issue, digital and climate. So those will be the themes that the voluntary sector will be focusing on, and hopefully feeding into the council's work and the local care organisations' work as well. There's going to be a new public artwork celebrating volunteers. So a little bit like the rainbow for the key workers, there's going to be a public artwork made by a local artist. There's going to be one of these artworks in Tameside, Oldham and Rochdale. And then a big focus for us is around venues, so community centres and other community buildings reopening. So supporting organisations to do that safely through kind of guidance and funding and practical support, but also thinking about what happens now in those places, and really using the good help themes, which I think you've probably all heard about. So the good help priorities around supporting people to design what happens in community centres, to design what happens in community spaces. And then the final thing is continuing to help with the response. So brokering volunteers through to those volunteer marshal roles, and supporting the funding based on the insight on what's coming in with the helpline, and that continuation of that community response, because it's not over yet. We are still in response mode. I think that covers everything, but I'm really happy to take questions if anyone's got any thoughts.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Kerry. I think Mark, where is it? I think I think you had enough of me at the beginning of the pandemic. I must admit, with the amount of emails I was sending to you, I did think we were going a little bit slow off the off start. But I think it's like you're saying, I think all that came together, and then eventually it was like you said, we actually did really, really well. And it's like full praise for what you've done over the last year. I think it's like you're saying, I think at the beginning I was getting very frustrated. I must admit that there wasn't that much communication with councillors in regards to what was going on, how we could get involved, how we could, because it's like you're saying, I was very lucky. Well, Cocolt was very lucky, I should say, because we had the hub there already. We already had RBH in there. We already had Circle in there. Action Together. I've already been into the Strand hub, so we actually had something there already that I was really eager to get going. And I think once we got everything sorted out, we actually went really well. So I think just as a side comment, hopefully this never ever happens ever again. But if it ever did, it was just something that to bear in mind, that we do need that first connection with councillors, because we are the ones who are embedded in our communities. I know that councillors are here. Actually, do you want to comment on that, Mark? Sorry, I noticed you turned your mic off. Sorry.
No, I'm back. No, I'm back on there, Chair. No, I mean, I totally accept it. I mean, I remember exactly what we were doing, and the leaflets and all that type of thing. And I think it's very difficult, isn't it, to look back and try and recreate the situation we were in, because we were in emergency response crisis. And I think it's often, we've had a couple of those, haven't we? If we go back to 2015 and the flooding and that type of thing. And I think, there's definitely some learning that came out of it. And in some ways, you've got to fall, before you can run. And I think I sort of learned a lot, and I know the teams did from that. And certainly, as we go into more and more of these things, hopefully not another pandemic, but I absolutely agree with you, Chair. And it's been proven, hasn't it, over the last 12 months, elected members particularly have been invaluable because of their insight into the locality and the fact that they've got so many networks that are already established. So I absolutely agree with you, Danny, Chair, and we learn from everything that we've done, good and bad. So yeah, I'd take that on board, Chair.
No, it's like you're saying. It was just something I wanted to put forward because this is the reason I wanted to sort of say this to in a scrutiny meeting, if you understand what I'm saying. And I think from what actually happened at the beginning, obviously we had a couple of bumps along the way, but we managed to get it sorted out and it all got ironed out and it went really fast. I think the last year in the end with our response, I think it was absolutely brilliant. I know councillors are here wants to come in, so I'll let you come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to give a massive thanks to Kerry and her team for doing fantastic work throughout the year, especially during the pandemic. I've been involved with Kerry before the pandemic because of the deprivation in my ward, and I think I'm one of the lucky ones who've been involved with them throughout the year. And sometimes we wait for that somebody will get in touch with the members and will get involved. And I've just noticed that they're doing the work, so I requested to be joined in, and I must say that it has been a fantastic experience for me to working across the board, and especially how the communities pulled together and supported each other across the borough. And it is amazing, and I'm sure that in the coming years we will remember all these people with great enthusiasm, the way we supported each other. My question is that we all know that the BAME community was hardest hit in the COVID, whatever area you look into it. And I would like Carrie to highlight how you supported BAME community and what plans do you have for future when we'll come out of this to continue this support, because I think that in the coming years we will be seeing more issues and how we are going to support and to bring people like the rest of the communities, and shouldn't be called deprived or left behind, because I don't like anybody in the borough, in the country, left behind, and everybody should have the same opportunities and the same treatment. And I'm really looking forward to it. And thank you again for all the work you have done.
Point very well made, councillors are here.
So if we take the example of the Equalities Assembly, I think that's a really good way to explain the journey. So the first Equalities Assembly came off the back of that first disparities report, which was really the first national report that highlighted that the BAME communities were specifically worse off because of COVID. And we held a conversation at that first Equalities Assembly around inequality in South Asian communities. From the back of that, we pulled off a list of our database of all of the BAME-led or BAME-supporting organisations. And then in all the themes that I mentioned before, so food and inequalities, we made sure that we had representation in each group. We also work with the council around their emergency food parcels. So now when somebody rings the emergency helpline, they don't get a box, which is a sort of generic tins of beans and packets of pasta. They get a specific box, which is suitable for their own culture. So we have some African boxes, we have South Asian boxes. I learned about loads of different foods that I hadn't heard of before, Gary and honey beans and other things. So we've got BAME specific offers now around food. And then the second Equalities Assembly, Councillor Samini, you were part of a conversation about women as well as South Asian women's experiences. And it was through those conversations that we've now secured this BAME specific mental health funding from the CCG, which is not the hugest amount in the world, it's £50,000, but I think we can make a big difference at the grassroots of communities with that money. And it hopefully gives an opportunity to show other areas of the health and social care system that investing specifically to address a highlighted inequality that the community is really articulately described can make a change in communities. So I hope that answers your question a little bit. Thank you.
Did you want to come in now, Mark?
Yeah, I was just wanted to add, if I can, because I think Samina makes a good point, but I just wanted to broaden it out really, because what I've learned over the last 12 months is that for all the positive things we've said and all the good things that have happened, one of the things is that expectations from communities have been set really high. And I think quite rightly, because what COVID has done, and a place like Rochdale Borough has always had health inequalities. COVID has just magnified those. And I think for us now, and me and Samina should actually be on a community call at the moment, we've stepped away from that to be part of this ONS committee. And if we're on that community call, these are the very things that we'd be talking about. We talk about COVID, of course, but we're also then talking about some of those broader agendas around how we're going to build back sustainable communities. And there is obviously some issues around BAME communities, but there are some fairly deep health inequalities across our whole borough. And a lot of those are unfortunately linked into deprivation, and that affects, a lot of people in our population. So I think that recovery process that I've mentioned is again something I think ONS committee would certainly recommend you to have a role in that, and to sort of see that recovery plan when it's developed, because that will be our roadmap. Forget about this roadmap that's just been announced now. That's our roadmap as a borough of how we're going to have that sustained recovery. And our starting point as a borough obviously was quite challenging to begin with. So we know that's going to be an uphill struggle. But as I've said earlier in the meeting, I think Rochdale's in a good place because of those relationships and that foundation we've got built. But there's going to be some significant challenges that we're going to have going forward. And I think having members support on that will be really important. And I would really suggest that at future dates, we maybe include that, Chair, as an agenda item so we can look at that broader piece around recovery. So thank you.
Just to quickly comment before I bring in Councillor Bestford, yes, I do agree. I think there is going to be a long road to recovery here. We've only got to look at health inequalities and what long COVID is doing as well. And to do with them people who are going to be, some people are going to be housebound due to this. We've been housebound due to long COVID. There was only, I can't remember his name. They were talking about a triathlon the other day. A person just running and and swimming and cycling. Basically, he was in bed for nearly 3 months, basically, due to long COVID. And we've only got to think about these people getting COVID, surviving COVID with these, with really bad comorbidities like heart disease and stuff like that, and how that is actually going to end up, and how that is actually going to end up affecting these health inequalities across the borough. I know it's not something really for this meeting, because really you'd be talking about health and more along the lines of that scrutiny meeting. But it is something that I think we would like to look at, especially as a community, where we do go forward and how we do recover from this. I'm going to bring in Councillor Bestford.
Thanks, Chair. I'll be quick because I know we've got a lot still to get through. And thank you, Kerry, for a fantastic presentation and for all the work that you've been doing. I wonder whether there's any way we can find a more direct route for elected members to engage with the volunteer opportunities presented by Action Together. I'm really aware that the way that I was able to support was because of the community organisations I'm already involved in Littleborough, but I know that there are 60 councillors committed to their communities and with strong networks as to potential sources for additional volunteer support. I'm particularly thinking about the vaccination centres. I've been fortunate enough to help out at some of the vaccination centres across the borough in Haywood, Rochdale and Littleborough. But I know that there is still a demand for more volunteers, whereas the route that elected members were going through seems to have dried up or seems to have changed or stopped. But I know that Kerry and the team are working really hard to find volunteers in the community. I'd love to see a bit more of a direct route between the council and councillors and the work of Action Together to make sure that there's a ready pool of willing volunteers to help Kerry and the work that they're all doing.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something we can take offline. Kerry, do you want to
Yeah, so I think there's been a little bit of confusion around volunteers. So just to let you all know whilst you're in the room, so the process is that Action Together registers volunteers. They then broker them through to the right opportunity. So that opportunity may be at the test sites, in which case they get passed to Living Well, who then do the training and support before then passing to be rotated on to the test sites or vaccination sites. So we can send that process round. But there's loads of opportunities at the moment, really exciting things, and positions on boards, volunteer positions on boards around new projects, and exciting roles around reopening. So if any councillors, I like to think of volunteering as contribution. So all of you contribute loads to your communities already, but if there's like some direct contribution that you'd like to work with us on, please get in touch. And I'd love to come and present or have a chat with you all at another point as well.
I must agree with Councillor Bestford actually, because when I registered to volunteer for yourselves, obviously I gave my passport in, but then I didn't particularly hear from you after that. Obviously, I know that there was a lot of volunteers at the time. There was a lot of people doing so. I understand that's why I probably didn't get contact. But in the end, I obviously found my own project and ended up working with Rochdale Soup Kitchen at that point. And it's like you're saying, it was I found my little thing because I could do bits and bats and work in the NHS as well at the same time. So it's like you're saying, there is opportunities out there, and I think I just applied at the wrong time, to be plainly honest.
At the beginning, we had 300 people overnight to volunteer, and all of them wanted to pack food parcels, and we couldn't get anyone together because of COVID. So we had things like the kindness cards project that people could do at home. But now we're in a different place. Yeah.
As about as I did the kindness cards, were very good actually. Yeah,
very good.
I got my son to put little handprints on them all.
Nice.
But just a quick side note, I think this will be something would be well discussed in townships. I think in township meetings, I think actually to offer a presentation to townships about what we've done, where we're going forward with this, and talking about the recovery plan as well. I think that'd be something really good to go into townships there. If the committee agrees, I think that could be minuted, Michael. Thank you. Any other questions at all? No? Take that silence. Do you want to say anything else, Mark or Kerry, or are you happy?
No, fine. As long as you're happy, Chair, that's the main thing. Yeah.
You know me, I'm always happy. Right, thank you very much. I think the next item, Anthony Johns is here for fly tipping. One of the most controversial things in Rochdale, I think. So good luck with this one.
Thanks. Good evening, all. Right, just bear with me while I'll need to present my screen, won't I? And I'm not familiar with how to do it on Zoom, so for me. Is that, sorry, I can't see. Are you able to see the first slide there?
Yeah, that's fine, Anthony.
Thank you, Joe.
Oh, hi, Joe. Sorry, I forgot you were here.
Yes, I've got my support with me. So for those of you I haven't met yet, I'm Anthony Johns. I'm the Environmental Action Unit Manager. I joined Rochdale around, I think, 18 months ago now. Time flies. I manage our enforcement officers and recycling team and the rights of way office of the borough. I'll try and keep everything quite brief because I am mindful of time. And gave myself a nice easy in, and I'm sure we all do know what is fly tipping, but simply put, it's the illegal disposal of controlled waste without a waste management license or environmental permit. So pretty much controlled waste pretty much covers everything. Why I wanted to start with this slide is just to sort of look, I broke it down into three very sort of broad categories. So household and domestic waste deposited near people's, place of residence. This is probably, working on the 80-20 rule. This is a lot of our most common occurrences, with man with a van type waste making up the next most common group. And then your larger scale events, such as I think in my time here, we've been very fortunate. We've just had one large tip of tires, and I think there was some fire extinguishers shortly before I arrived. Probably the household domestic will make a little bit more sense to go into the presentation, probably as those of you who've seen it will hopefully it'll make sense later. So in terms of fly tipping trends, and when I read this back, I think perhaps I just need to clarify a couple of points. And the next couple of slides show some pictorial demonstrations of this. Overall, in terms of our reports, they've remained fairly consistent, I think within about a 10% variance over the last 4 years. And by reports, that's what's coming in from the public and what we're reacting to from them. Then the big change is how things have gone proactively. I think we've certainly over the last year we've collected a lot proactively, which is probably reflective of what people are seeing out on the ground. But alongside that, we've started to use our mobile technology a little bit better, and there's more on that later. And I think we're a lot slicker about actually reporting what we are doing. And that's not to be critical of anything that we've done previously. I think that's just making better use of the technology available, which is something that we're all keen to do and to continue to do. So we're continuing to take enforcement action where we've got the evidence to do so, and it's been challenging the last year with Rochdale having spent, I think it's all but 27 days in the strictest of conditions since things kicked in. We have had to adapt where we can, and we do, due to this, have quite a backlog, and that's both in the courts, who for obvious reasons have had to prioritise different types of work for what they're able to get through, and then ourselves, our team, we've got a huge amount of cases that we will be looking to interview people in person when we're able to do so. I've talked here a little bit about publicity, just because I wanted to get it in there. You know, we've tried to get as much as we can in on social media, but some of your more typical articles that you'll have got used to seeing, the reason that you've not seen them is because we're not getting the cases through court. It's not that they're not there and we're not doing it. It's just that the courts haven't seen them yet. So we're trying to use social media as best we can. I think I will touch on this in a bit more detail later. So as I said, I've sort of talked through this, but as you can see, our overall number of recorded fly tips, it's significantly influenced by that blue line there, which is how we record our proactive. As you can see, you know, going back a few years, we really weren't capturing that work, although it was being done. And now we're capturing it to such an extent that the work that the teams are picking up themselves off their own backs is similar to what we're actually being told about. I've included the next step, and for the purposes of the strategy, I will need to unpack this a little bit because there's a lot of variance there, and there's a lot of room for interpretation depending on how each council reports what they find, and depending on where they are in their, you know, depending on whether they've done different initiatives and things like that. I know from my time at a different council, they had a huge variance in their figures because they adopted a different strategy one year, and it did change. Have a massive impact on their reporting. But as I say, when it comes to the actual strategy itself, I'll be looking to try where I can to unpack these figures a little bit more, just to give a narrative around how we're performing.
Can I make a quick comment about that, Anthony?
Yeah, certainly. So
I just noticed Wigan's figures. That's all. You know what I'm about to say, don't you? So do you think there's any correlation in regards to that they're not part of GMCA in regards to the recycling? Just quick.
I wouldn't like to comment until I had time to look into it, but clearly from that, there's two authorities there that will be looking to do some, do a little bit of investigating to understand why they're working well. I know I have had some conversations with Bolton, and they are doing something around domestic waste that I find quite interesting, and I'm starting to explore how we might be able to work that into our strategy. Wigan I haven't spoke to yet, but obviously I will be doing. Conversely, I'll be speaking to Manchester to understand why there's, I know it's a big city, but just to understand what the challenges they've had are, because where with it being a city, sometimes where they're ahead of us, we can sometimes feel those things later on in this. I hope that answers it. Answers what you're saying. And when I do know more, I'll let you know. So just what I think many of you will know, but just for a bit of clarity, the team structure of it that we have here in EM. My teams, the enforcement and recycling officers, work on a township, loosely on a township-based model. Obviously, that there is a little bit of variance around demand, but that's so that you've got that contact as members, and also they build up that local knowledge rather than moving around. Our hit teams, we have 3 of them working on the high appetite vehicles. They work on a rotation, so they will be in an area for a month at a time, but they do move on. There are reasons for that, but I won't bore you with them. And the other thing I think that's really important around our team structure is we do, for Martin does strongly encourage that we all take a responsibility and a stewardship of the area. So it isn't just those sort of 4 recycling officers, 4 enforcement officers and hit teams that are doing this work. It's everyone. They're all feeding into it. They're all letting us know what they find. Many of them are referring cases in for colleagues to investigate. So, we do see it as a team effort to try and deal with this massive problem that we have. Not that we have, but that nationally we have with fly tipping. Just get me on notes. Sorry. So in terms of how it works, most of the service requests, and by service requests I mean what the public ring up with, they route it through our enforcement officers. They have a look at them and they'll decide whether it's something that our hit teams are best placed to deal with, or whether it's something that they're best placed to deal with. That's recognizing the volume of reports and how to best make use of their time, because they have a different skill set and they can't remove the waste, the enforcement officers. Whereas a hit team operative, they will do the investigation and remove it there and then, which is obviously something that we really like from a public facing perspective, because the public see us there investigating it, moving it, and it looks very neat. Anything that's private will stay with the enforcement officer, because ultimately we look to ensure that the private landowner removes the waste, and we take action to make sure that that's done. Just move, I think. And I'm mindful of the time, so I'll skip over the next couple of points. I wanted to talk a little bit about ownership and adoption status of alleyways, because I think it'll be key to how I'm looking at our strategy moving forward. We've got 700 alleyways across the borough, of which over 400 are in Rochdale itself, and they're a mix of different types as I've set out there. And I think why that's important is ownership speaks for itself. If it's owned by someone, it means that someone's responsible for that land, and it influences how we tackle it. If it's not owned, then it does fall upon the council, so that unregistered land, and indeed our known owned land, we'll look at a different way to own land. And there's a similar sort of thing for adopted and unadopted highway. The reason I've got that image there is just to show from the public perspective, it can be challenging, because across just 3 streets there, I think we've got 4 different types of ownership. So person living at property A could be asked to remove the waste, whereas person living at property B could be told, may never know that we've been and removed the waste that's in the alleyway behind them. It does, as I'll move on, it does lead to some challenges. And this is just a recent one, and we've had an awful lot of these sort of over with people having perhaps a little bit more time in the pandemic, where when we make a landowner clear up the alleyway that they own, they're often quite upset about it, particularly in the case of absent landlords. But we do that, and that's something that we think is important, rather than private landowners be completely dependent on us just because it's an alleyway to remove it. Forgive me if this is too fast, but I am mindful that I've got quite a lot of slides and I want to try and speak over them all. So I touched on technology earlier, and at the moment we're just getting to grips and doing some testing on our new system, which is Alloy. It'll help us be intelligence led in our response to fly tipping. and how we tackle it. So got a couple of screenshots here of how it works, and as you can see, it'll map for us where our problem areas are, which we'll use in conjunction with the intelligence that we're receiving from our operational staff, indeed, well, all of our staff, and colleagues in different departments, and indeed yourselves as local members. It'll all help inform how we work moving forward. So onto something I get asked about a lot, CCTV. We, a couple of months ago, if that, maybe a month ago, put up our first dedicated environmental enforcement camera. It was a little while in the making. It's something that when I started, I was asked to look into, and once I started to look into it, there's an awful lot of solutions with a number of different, pros and cons. The solution that we've got at the moment, it's from a local firm, and and colleagues in different departments also use this firm. So we've tried to hit the ground running with that, and indeed, it's in the time it's been up, it's captured a few events. It's captured a very young child running and slinging a bin bag through to someone at the other end of the age spectrum, fly tipping. So we're currently looking at where we'll get with them cases. CCTV is great, and we want to use it more. We want to use it to the best of our ability. It's no panacea, but alongside everything else we've got, we're keen to implement it into our toolkit of how we deal with fly tipping. So we'll be seeing a little bit more of that, because I've had some conversations, and I'm trying to think if any of the councillors present are ones that I have had that conversation with. But a number of councillors have sort of said that they'd be really interested to know about what more we can do with CCTV and how it can perhaps work with some of their problem areas. So in terms of our options tackling fly tipping going forward, now this slide, I tried to make it easy to digest, and I just couldn't. It's because there's so many variables and how we can look at it going forward. We recognise we don't want to carry on doing things the same. So, but we want to build on the good practices we've got, and one of our options is to maintain a very similar model, but using CCTV and more intensive engagement enforcement. Just work in more concentrated areas. At the moment, we can be at times quite thinly spread, so perhaps look at how we can rejig our resources so that we can drop in on areas and spend, be it 4 weeks, 8 weeks, however long is necessary in an area, until we're sort of satisfied we've turned a corner. So, for want of a better way of putting it. And the next one has been a bit more rigid in our assessments, as you've seen there. In one of the early slides when I tried to show you the different land types. At the moment, we can be quite fluid in terms of, because we have to, we look at how the perception is of perhaps, having one alleyway maintained more frequently than another by virtue of its adoption status or by virtue of its land ownership. But it would be very challenging to implement something like that. It's something we're considering around how we can do this. Point 3 is around always serving notice on privately owned alleyway. This would be a way to reduce demand on ourselves, but it potentially could transfer some issues to the victims. If you live by an alley gate, you will disproportionately be affected by us serving notice every time on waste. And then a couple of other options that I included in terms were about how our operational teams might clear areas at the moment. Our HIT team will go and clear an area, and if we receive another report, we'll clean another area. However, there is a possibility we could look at it saying, well, we were there in reaction to a complaint. It's not our land. It's an unregistered piece of land. It's we will not go back a day later, we'll go back a week later. Again, controversial. I'm just explaining what some of the options are. And then something else that I was giving some thought to was we have our, manifesto funded clean and green teams and around how we could maybe work that into our fly tipping strategy to make them marry up. Again, the only options at this stage. And then finally, just some next steps that that we're looking at. The CCTV camera we've acquired. We've it's now located on Sussex Street. It's identified its next sites across the next 3 boroughs already. We'll be looking to move that around, and hopefully we'll see some good results from that. But I'm keen to then take that to those councillors and townships who've inquired about getting a township dedicated camera to show them what they'd be getting. Both, and as I've said, they typically create some really good quality cases, and I'd be hopeful that they'd be some of the first ones that we get through when the courts reopen, in the event that we don't get some successful some successful FBNs, should I say. I've included better communication in promoting successful fines and prosecutions, and this is not. We've got a fantastic communications officer. I think part of the problem is, and I've really struggled with this with my team, is getting them to say how good they are. They do some brilliant work, and quite often I find out about it by accident. And I'm really encouraging them to be a little bit better about shouting about what we've done, because if we don't say, sometimes the great work we do can be can go unseen. Flexibility in our approach. One thing, on the counter side of that, I think sometimes I want to promote that, where we can at times be a little bit rigid. This is the way we do it. I want to move away from that into, how we can perhaps be more fluid and look at and react to the situation in front of us. Now the next one, I've talked about appointing some temporary enforcement officer. I want to be really clear. This isn't about throwing resources at it. There's definitely a demand, and it would. My view is that if we had I've looked at the team. There's no one sat not making good use of the time. It's just that there's more. There's an awful lot of work to be done, and if we do get a little bit more resource, which is what we're looking at, it'll allow a little bit more time to spend on some of our proactive ideas that we'd like to just germinate a little bit and take forward. And then finally, hopefully we'll be in a position to be taking the completed strategy to Cabinet later in the year. Okay, thank you. Sorry, it went on a little while longer than I anticipated.
No, that's fine. Anthony, that's really great what you've done today. I think it's given us an introduction into what you want to do over the next couple of years. Now, it's like you're saying, I think some people have been privy to the emails that I've sent today. I know Councillor Besford has, in regards to fly tipping increase across the borough, and especially in my own ward. But a lot of people are concerned that it's to do with the new recycling limitations that have been put in place. Now, I don't particularly think it is, to be honest. I'm going to say that now. But the thing at the same time, I think that there needs to be more for people who don't have a car, want to get rid of their bulky items. I know that the service is in place, but sometimes it's not just bulky items. Sometimes it's just the extra bin bag that they can't get in the bin and stuff like that. Where we actually go with that in the future, I think that would be good to see in your strategy how we can actually tackle that issue there. I don't know what you think about that at all, if you wanted to comment on it at all.
Yeah, certainly. From my perspective, whilst we have an enforcement team and a recycling team, I don't see them as separate entities. We sit them together. We expect them to work together. That the issues go hand in hand. As you said, for many cases, the reason something's fly tipped is because of a lack of capacity or a lack of understanding around using bins properly, and also around people who are struggling. It's not all, but not by no means is most fly tipping malicious. It's due to lots of circumstances, and I think it is really important. And the team recognise that. I think it would be remiss to go down the route of this strategy without taking that into account. So I fully, concur with everything you're saying, basically.
Yeah, that's fine. I know that Martin wants to quickly come in, so let Martin come in.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I think the main issue we've got in the borough as a whole, I think 3/4 of the fly tipping is alleyway related, and if we're honest, and bin collection point related. So it is a significant problem. What we would like to do after lockdown, when it eventually ends, is look at some bespoke campaigns, area-based campaigns, because we don't think one size fits all. You know, for example, you were saying Kirkcaldy, and I was having this similar discussion with someone yesterday around, it's not always bulky items. You know, we brought in half price bulkies, which has been really, really successful. We feel, I think it's something like treble the amount of bulky collections we do when we reduce that price. However, a lot of it's just the odd bin bag. Now, to me, we can't. If we was to go out, we're in a difficult position. If we were to go out and be really reactive and remove these bin bags straight away, then what message are we sending to the residents for a start? So I think what we need to be doing is, yeah, we've done the right thing. We're getting our hit teams out there, searching the bags, finding out where they're coming from. But now we need to start, for example, especially in a lot of the built-up areas where there's lots of alleyways, where we're having lots of collection point issues. We need these officers knocking on doors as well. And it's about education. It's about making sure people have got the right bins. They've got the right bin capacity, you know, depending on the number of households they have. You know, they could be eligible for an extra domestic waste bin. There's lots of different reasons why that may be happening. There's also issues around the number of the turnover of tenants in a lot of the rented properties as well, which we seem to suffer from. So what I'm trying to say basically is what we want to do is, obviously starting with committee tonight, is engage with members, but we'd like to come up with, because we do have a range of tools, a bespoke plan for some of our priority areas. So we'd like members in townships to nominate a priority area. We can feed into that. You know, we can give you a lot more detail, and Andy could, obviously we could be here all night. We give you tons of detail about, you know, types, locations. You know, we can lots of analysis. We can share that with board members, and I think we could use that information to come up with a sort of put some resource at it that we've already got within the service, and come up with a bespoke plan that one size doesn't fit all. Prime example, I'll shut up in a second. One tool we do have is a Section 78 notice, where we can serve a statutory notice on alleyways. Certain, which alleyways are they, Anthony? Sorry, I think it's the unadopted ones.
Yeah, they'll be unadopted and under multiple ownership.
Yeah, and what that does, it gives residents, we're saying, look, it's your responsibility. This doesn't belong to the council, it's unadopted. As residents, with properties adjoining, it's your responsibility to clear this waste and keep it clear. Seems a bit draconic, but it tends to work and it gets the message over. Now, we're not saying use that everywhere, because all we end up doing is billing, you know, hundreds and hundreds of residents who have not paid, basically, when we've cleared it in default. But you know what? There's certain areas where we're having particular problems over and over and over again. That is a tool we could use, if you get where I'm coming from. So there's a mixture, and like I say, we're keen to work with members on coming up with these bespoke action plans.
I must admit, the team, obviously, in the environment, have literally been absolutely outstanding when it comes to obviously cleaning areas that are unadopted in the past. Obviously, they've done it recently, as Joe's nodding ahead for me. And it's like you're saying, it's about getting that, but at the same time, we want that perception of that we're a council that does care about our residents and our areas, and to make sure that they are clean and we are actually proactively cleaning them areas, but at the same time actually catching these people who are actually doing, the terrible crime of fly tipping. But at the same time, I understand where you're coming from, Martin, but I don't want to start antagonising residents. But the problem is obviously that'll be when they're getting that rental, or when they're getting the actual mortgage on that house. Obviously, it would actually be saying that you actually have an unadopted highway at the back of you. But it's about actually getting that message out that, that's the situation that they are going to be in the future. So it's at the same time, I think we do need a lot of education involved there before we start doing stuff like that, because I don't want to start antagonising and residents and wondering why alleyways being cleaned and another one's not. So it's only just to put that point across back to yourselves as well. I'm going to bring in Councillor John Blundell as the newest member of the Scrutiny Committee.
I'm the best. But no, so in all seriousness, so I said the question right at the start because these services, fly tipping, bins, are the most essential service the council offers. And if you ask a resident in the borough, they automatically think about picking up waste. They think that's the only thing they get for their £150 a month, and therefore when it goes wrong, it really reflects badly on the council. And I just want to echo what Danny said about how good the service is in Rochdale. However, there's a couple of I've had a couple of thoughts. One thing that we've not picked up on, and it is a key, and Martin's absolutely right. All my experiences tell me that the most important thing is the collection point. So you're talking about alleyways in this case, but there's also in my ward in central Littleborough where I live, lots of terraced houses where you end up with an area with lots of bins, and that is essentially a hotspot for people dropping stuff off because they know that the refuse people come past and then it'll get reported and picked up or whatever. But what we're not very good at, and I do think bigger cities are better at, is when there's more options to get rid of your waste, and there's more options than just having a wheelie bin. So in some areas it won't be appropriate, but there are places in my ward I know of and in central Littleborough where it'd be appropriate to have a communal bin. Now I know they're not always popular, and I know they can be a bit of a magnet for things getting dropped off. But it kind of I don't know how to put it, because it's a collection point. It kind of ring fences where it happens. So at the minute you have lots of bins outside people's houses in a collection, then you end up with fly tipping anyway. Whereas if you had a communal bin, it would, a lot of it would subside, or you could fit it all in the bin. Now, I'm not saying this is a solution that we're going to roll out across the borough, but the point Marty made about bespoke options, I think we need to be a bit more inventive around how people can drop their waste off. And I think this is utterly key until we actually provide that type of service. The second point is a bit of a gripe. There are, I would say, I think over the years, bin men have been told, if the bin's overflowing, don't pick it up. If they've left lots of stuff next to the bin, don't pick it up. But actually, I think because people are spending more time at home, they're going to be going to work less. Unless we plan on providing much bigger bins, the council's going to have to accept it's going to have to start taking bins that are a bit more full. Otherwise, this is going to just become an increasing problem. So my question is what are we doing to diversify the offer of dropping your waste off? That's including communal bins, drop-off points in local areas that seem to have gone over the years. And secondly, what are we doing to adjust the pattern of how we pick things, how we empty people's bins, how much we'll accept off them, etc.
Must admit, I do agree, John. I do agree. I'll bring in Joe. Did you want to answer? Sorry.
Yeah. Do you mind if I respond? Sorry, Councillor Blundell. Yeah. Communal bins are certainly an option, and I think maybe that is something we could include in the strategy. Just experiences, we do end up with lots of contamination in the recycling bins because people don't take ownership of it. And sometimes because they're bigger bins, I'm sorry, people do use them to get rid of bulky items, but it's something, we'd be willing to trial, certainly. We have, your second point was sort of, obviously more people are working from home, people are staying in. We've seen our waste risings increase significantly throughout lockdown. You're all busy producing lots more cans and beer bottles. So thank you very much for that. The crews are told, that provided the lid of the bin can shut, to empty it. It is difficult because if we take, an extra bag from everyone, soon, our trucks are full, the crews won't finish in time, and it really will impact on our waste arisings. And, going back to the earlier presentation on climate change, one of the fundamental reasons why we want to reduce the amount of waste we produce and encourage recycling is it is a major impact on climate change.
Can I just say, not collecting the waste doesn't mean it's not being produced.
No,
it's not climate, and it is the only way around this. I mean, ultimately, what will continue to happen. This is my experience again, because a lot of people have taken to, well, at one point were taken to dropping off things outside my mother's on the Cray estate, because they knew when I drove past I'd spot it and get it picked up, because they knew I was a councillor, which was a problem. But the collection point is, you're saying we're not going to empty your bin unless it's had the lid closed. What if people produce more waste? Is that person then got to go to the tip once a month?
But one of the things, one of the things, Councillor Blundell, we do offer is a waste audit, and certainly our recycling officers. If you know any of your constituents who are struggling with capacity, then by all means get in contact with us, and we can send one of our recycling officers out. I accept, if you've got young children in nappies, you're going to certainly struggle, I think, probably with 3 weekly collections, and that's where we will look at providing you with an additional bin.
And these alleyways and these terraced houses where you get this collection, though, all they do is they just throw it next to all the bins.
Mm.
When you say we're not collecting it because of the bin, it just ends up on the floor. So I mean, ultimately, I think the council I fully accept what you're saying and why things, but we've gone too far on. We're only picking this much up. We're only picking it up at this point. We need to provide more collection points and be more flexible about picking up waste. That's the point I'm making.
I think it's something that could be picked up in the strategy. I think going forward, to be honest, because I think this is what we should be doing in this meeting, is obviously picking up on these points that we can put in the strategy moving forward, so we can scrutinise it at a later date. Is that okay, Councillor Blundell?
Sorry, I'm the waste disposal champion of the council now. It really is. Just to reiterate, this is number one priority for the public, and we do have to get it right. And where we're flexible and where we pick things up sheds us in such a good light that we really can't get it wrong.
Bringing Councillor Kelly now.
Thank you, Chair. One observation and two questions, I think. One observation is that, and it's one for another day, I think but Wigan actually has free bulky waste collection for a wider range of items, and that might be why Wigan's figures are a bit lower on the fly tip than ours. So that's a bit of food for thought. But the other 2 points or questions I want to ask are related a bit wider to different areas that perhaps aren't necessarily blighted by the alley problem, if that's what we're going to call it. So my first one is around people who hold a waste disposal license but abuse said license, because it's rather easy to get hold of one in terms of registration to be a waste disposal organisation, and what powers do we have to enforce strict punishments on those who take money off people to move stuff away, holding a license, which is what we always ask residents to check for, and then fly tip it somewhere usually in Milnrow and Newhay, in one of the country lanes leading out of the borough. And the other one is a bit more of a ward frustration I have with landfill and illegal landfilling on farms, where farmers isn't the right word, but landowners are taking hundreds of pounds per lorry load of aggregate without a license. We report it, it gets looked into, it gets passed up to the Environment Agency, and then it seems to go clandestine, and like MI5, nobody can give you an answer on anything at all. And it's incredibly frustrating, because there must be 5 or 6 cases that I've called in the last year or two, where wagons are simply filling in valleys all around us. And I've sat and listened through our climate change discussion earlier, and we're seriously poisoning and damaging the river systems and biodiversity of the surrounding greenbelt areas around the borough. And well, my question is, what do we do about it? Because it's stopping with the A all the time isn't the solution that we or anybody in the borough wants to come up with. So two sort of long-winded questions there. One's about tipping in the countryside, and the other one's about license holders again tipping in country lanes where it's a bit quiet and they know that there's no cameras about.
Can I just come in there, Chair? If that's okay.
Yeah, go on, Martin.
Just to address the first part of the question, we do have powers to actually seize vehicles if it can be proven that that vehicle's been used to facilitate fly tipping, whether or not they've got a license. Something we would like to do going forward, and I've discussed this with the leader recently at a regular catch-up, is doing some campaigns as part of this again, this sort of wider campaign work on targeting some of these man and vans who are fly tipping in some of these areas. I don't want to go into too much detail for obvious reasons, but to answer your question, yeah, we do have powers, and obviously they can be prosecuted for fly tipping, and we can, as a local authority, work with the police to actually remove their vehicle and have it crushed, and other authorities have used that successfully. It is something our portfolio holder is really keen for us to do as well, to use that legislation where we can, and it's something we'll be working on, looking at using this year going forward. It ties into the second part of your question as well, around sort of illegal landfill sites and illegal transfer stations. You're quite right, it's governed, these sites are governed by the Environment Agency. There was one yesterday we were working with planning colleagues on, which was referred as well, which I won't go into any more detail on, but as a local authority, I believe there's...
Sorry, I didn't mean to
I believe there's very little we can do about that.
It was one of mine.
Sorry, who was that? Sorry.
I was apologising for interrupting you.
Is that you, Andy? Sorry, Councillor Kelly. I wasn't sure he was speaking, you see, sorry. So we have reported that. Like I said, there's very little we can do, but we can work with the Environment Agency, and we can work with GMP, and we can encourage them to work with us as part of doing some campaigns going forward in the future. If you think there's a particular problem in your ward, again, talking about this bespoke approach to dealing with fly tipping, that could be something we may want to look at in your ward, but possibly doing some more of them random checks, stopping these vehicles. We'd have the powers to, with the police and the EA, to stop the vehicles and ask them to see the licenses, etc. All I can do though is to everyone else who's listening, if you do suspect that there's an illegal landfill site or transfer station operating, you can go into the Environment Agency website, and there's a list of all waste carriers on there, people who have permits, so you'll be able to actually check, put a postcode in, put a business name in, you'll be able to check if they've got a waste carrier licence or a transfer licence. And if you have any suspicions, that there are links on there for you to report to the Environment Agency. You'll take it from there.
Would you like to come in, Councillor Kelly, again? Follow up. Are you okay?
No, I'm fine. Thank you, Dan. That's all right.
Fine. Councillor Winkler's got a comment on this subject.
Thank you, Chair.
You missed me, Chair.
No, I've not missed you, Councillor Zahir. He's got a comment on what we're talking about right now. That's what I asked in the chat.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Just a comment, it probably sits between what Councillor Kelly's just been saying and the waste removal people that we're talking about. One thing I see is a lot of residents who kind of find it acceptable if they've got a washing machine or a fridge or some other sort of bulky metal item, shall we say, to leave it outside the house for a waste carrier to find. Now, I don't know whether these are licensed people who are picking it up or not, but inevitably what we've had, they pick this item up, it disappears, the householder has got rid of their item. The metal may find its way to a scrap yard, but can't be weighed in, find themselves to places like Ashworth Valley, when these unscrupulous scrap collectors don't want the non-metal elements of it. Is there some way that we could maybe try to educate the residents that putting this stuff outside your house, yes, it disappears, and yes, the local scrap man takes it, but there is a fly tipping element that is definitely coming from that sort of collection. Scrtuiny.
Yeah, just come in there, Chair. Joe looks after the comms team as well and the campaigns team, and this year we'll be pulling together a comms campaign as well, which we can include something like that in there certainly to try and raise the profile of that. Big one we're trying to raise all the time is the man in the van issue, so we can go into a bit more detail on that if that's what members wish.
Would you like to come back, Councillor Winkler? No? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I'm trying to turn my mic back on.
It's all right.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillors are here, please.
Thank you. We were just earlier talking about hotspots, fly tipping in some areas. If we look at the data, is there any relation of fly tipping minusing the man and van with the deprivation? Because what I have felt is that when we have done the offers of 50%, I never used to have a phone call from residents in my ward regarding the pickup of, because they used to think it's too expensive. But when you lower the prices, I felt that a number of people were interested in that. So that's why I'm asking, is there any relation with the amount of the incidents you record with the deprived area or not? Have we looked into it?
Go on, whoever wants to answer.
Yeah, I on that, Chair. The honest answer is no, we haven't done anything on that recently. I think it was about 12 years ago when we did the last Grotspot study with one of the overview and scrutiny committees, and there was a very clear link then. I can dig that report out again, but I think it goes without saying that there is a link to yeah. I can share that with you, Councillor.
Councillor Blundell, please. Oh, sorry, Councillor here. Do you want to follow up at all?
Thank you very much for that. And I think that would be very interesting because it will help us to build a future strategy, how we can support such areas to remove this element, because obviously we are spending a lot of resources, and how can we tackle it and make a better policy to improve it.
I think it'd be something brilliant to pick up in the future, especially when you're saying about this localised plan on fly tipping. I think it'd be brilliant to pick that up. Councillors are here. So, Councillor Blundell, sorry.
So do you know, you say that we have, this is particular, you've looked at a lot of fly tipping, but in general, lots of litter and things collects in alleyways and things. Presumably you've got the same powers to deal with that yet, so you're nodding, so I'm going to say yeah. So, for example, fields on RBH land, if you walk around Smallbridge Estate, it's quite clear that RBH haven't set foot on it for several years. Or the person who sits on the thing that cuts the grass has never got off it. Are we able to fine Rochdale Borough-wide Housing for leaving years and years worth of litter next on the sides of pavements and things, leaving their estates in a shocking state? Because it's on their land.
Yeah, RBH the same as same as the council, and any other land manager have a responsibility under the litter code of practice to keep their land tidy and free of litter as so far as reasonably practical. And as a local authority, we do have powers to deal with that if we need to. We tend not to, if I'm honest. We try to engage with them as partners. We do work with them, but if there's a particular problem like that on a piece of RBH land, what they're not managing, or any land manager, not just RBH, there's a piece of land that they're not managing, then we will pick it up. The enforcement team, Anthony's team, will take that forward and deal with it formally if needs be. And thankfully, we've never had to get to that stage in the past, if I'm honest. But if there's a particular problem, I'm sure I'll pick it up.
Yeah, I'd expand upon that. In the 18 months I've been here, we've engaged quite intensively with in two different areas for exactly that sort of problem, where we felt that some of our partners perhaps could have been doing a little bit more, and we've used our experience to guide them. And we've got our guys are out on the ground, and particularly for some of our partners, they've not been able to get out due to COVID, and we'll use our knowledge to help them. And when we do, where we think that they can do more, we do press hard. But we, as Martin said, we
just because it did strike me today. I was walking around Smallbridge Estate. I had to visit the library because I'm lobbying to try and get an extension to it. And when we was on the way back to my car, I decided just to have a quick walk around the estate. And I honestly thought the Rochdale rubbish chip is cleaner. If you walk around that refuse site, it's much cleaner than Smallbridge Estate, Lowell. It's absolute disgrace. And there's like ice pop wrappers and things hanging out the ground. That's clearly been there for several years. Yet somebody's been to cut the grass. In the past, I've walked around with them and they've just done absolutely nothing. So you kind of give up. So I do think that it'd be useful for officers to meet us on the estate, and then if we can take action against them, because it really is a big problem on these RBH estates where there's no road. If it's these estates where it's like lots of paths and it's a labyrinth, they just don't bother with them. They don't look. And it's a big issue.
Can I just quickly say something before you answer that? Sorry. So obviously Joe is aware of this. I think you've been privy to a couple of emails that have been sent about, especially, I know we're going back to Cocolt Estate again, but it is an issue, especially on RBH estates or like say across the borough, maybe on a Riverside estate, about who actually owns the land, and stuff like that. And I think sometimes that information gets crossed sometimes, because RBH say they don't own it, you say you don't own it, and it's someone who's private who owns it. I think sometimes I understand it's to do with the land registry, but we need to somehow speed that up, I think, so we can actually get this area cleaned rather than actually having a debate about who owns the land.
Chair, very quickly again. Just to make all members aware that we do, our enforcement officers are area based as well. So you will have a lead officer for whatever ward you're in. And if you'd like to arrange a walkabout on site with them, and they can obviously try and engage with the relevant housing officer or other land manager, then they will do that and they'll make that arrangement. So we're happy to do that. If members want to contact Joe or Anthony, they'll put them in touch with that area officer.
Did you want to say anything else, Councillor Blundell? Are you happy with that?
It's because it's just an interesting one where I knew that the council could take action against a specific spot or a small piece of land. I didn't know we could take action a bit more widely. And I think that we need to make certain partners, as you put it, more aware of that.
Not putting it bluntly there, are you, John? Is there any more questions on this item? No. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming for that, and hopefully we can see you at another scrutiny meeting with that plan. It'd be nice if we could actually get maybe a bit of a timeline next time about what we want to do on certain times, actually, to develop this plan. So that'd be something that you could pick up for the next meeting. Thank you very much. So moving on to the next. Sorry, Martin, you want to say something? Yeah, go on. Are you just saying bye?
No, it was thank you.
Oh,
thank you. Bye now.
Oh, it's fine, not to worry. So we'll move on to the next item. I believe that is it Councillor Blundell wants to introduce it first, and then the officers are going to come in after that.
So the first one's draft lower Fairlinge plan.
Yes, correct.
Sorry, I've got a really bad cough. I keep going on these Zoom calls sounding like death. So I just thought I would show my face for this. And of course, this is part of the consultation. This doesn't normally come to scrutiny, but I did ask Paul and Wayne to bring this to ONS before it went out, purely because a lot of the concerns expressed around College Bank and RBH coming to address the scrutiny committee a couple of years ago has obviously been led by Councillor Meredith and some of the other concerns expressed by members of this committee. So I just wanted to bring this SPD here to be scrutinised and to get people to pen off. but also to point out this doesn't include College Bank. Sorry, I've got such a bad cough. It mentions College Bank because there has been previous consultations. Whatever people think of those consultations, they happened. So that's why it mentions that. But this SPD isn't about helping RBH or the council in that regard, or any other developer develop College Bank. This is quite specifically about Lower Fairlinge. So I just wanted to say briefly before Wayne comes in from my point of view and what I think members' point of view is that we want Lower Fairlinge to be developed. We want affordable housing and more housing directly on the against the town centre. So therefore, we want whatever tools we need to help develop that area. Yes, RBH will be a partner, and like I said, although I don't always see eye to eye on a lot of things with RBH, particularly grounds maintenance. But when it comes to affordable housing, they are the main provider, so the council wants to work with them, and we want to work with them effectively. And I think what this SPD shows is our aspiration for that area, but also B, that the council does have a willing to work with the social housing provider, because we understand them providing homes is a good thing. Not all the housing in it will be affordable and social, but it will be a massive boost to the town centre in terms of population right on the doorstep. And I think that this is an exciting plan. It's been going on for years, but these SPDs will give the council some more teeth to deal with some of the issues that's been holding it back, and will help things move at a pace.
I just want to say thanks, John, for the clarity, because I was confused when you actually looked further down. It had a lot to do with College Bank in it as well, but then in the actual SDP, the supplementary planning document, it had actually nothing in there about College Bank, and I was like, what's going on here? But no, thank you very much for that clarity. I'll bring in Wayne Poole. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, some of this stuff has already been covered by Councillor Blundell, but it was just say we are currently out for consultation on the draft SPD that's been produced for Lower Fairlinge. The SPD sets out a vision for the area which seeks to deliver high quality, attractive neighbourhood, providing a choice of quality housing alongside improved access, open spaces, and other associated infrastructure. The SPD contains a number of sections which provide more details in terms of key requirements and priorities in terms of development, principles, design principles, transport and access. A key priority that really is set out in it is to ensure that through improved design and accessibility, the Lower Fairlinge area does relate better to the town centre, which I know was identified as a key issue through some of the previous discussions that have taken place. And therefore, it's hoped that the delivery of this will complement the ongoing regeneration of the town centre, which is obviously continuing apace, providing an attractive location for existing and future residents in a sustainable location adjacent to the town centre. I think Councillor Bunnell's touched on this, but the advantage of the SPD is to guide the ongoing development in a comprehensive and coordinated way. That's one of the key elements, really. And as noted in the report, it will be a material consideration in guiding future planning applications, assisting in site assembly, and also support bids for additional funding, for example, to deliver some infrastructure elements potentially. I mean, supplementary planning documents are a useful planning tool which expand on existing planning policy, and they have and are being developed in other parts of the borough. Obviously, the next item relates to one that's been developed for Station Gateway. In the past, they've been used to guide areas of housing market renewal, for example, and things like that, with the overall aim really of delivering high quality development and creating better places and neighbourhoods. The draft SPD, as I say, it's currently out for consultation. That commenced on the 12th of February, runs to the 26th of March, so runs for 6 weeks in total. Any comments received will be considered and any appropriate changes made before a final version of the supplementary planning document is brought back to members for adoption. So that's all I have to say, Chair.
Are you happy for us to ask questions, or do you want to come in as well, Paul? Sorry.
No, happy to open debate and hear any points from the committee members, Chair. Thank you.
That's fine, no worries. It's just a quick question. Don't worry, you'll be able to answer it. And obviously the supplementary planning document that's in front of us. Now, if I remember very rightly, probably talking about 3-4 years ago, this came to Rochdale Township. And it was basically, there was a lot of issues to do with College Bank raising their lower failings at the time. Now, I remember it was actually College Bank was included in it originally. Can I ask, is it separate now, or is it just nothing in there at all about or is it just been excluded completely from what's going on in that area? I just wondered what's going on, really, basically.
So, well, I mean, I'll answer that. This document is no longer about College Bank.
Right, okay.
Any reference to College Bank in it is about, obviously, planning policies that the council develop. So that's in the past, but obviously it's still referenced because the past still happened. But going forward, the council doesn't intend to help RBH develop College Bank. Well, as long as I'm around, it will not be doing that. It's been made quite clear by this committee, by council, by the views of various council members of housing, that the council do not agree with Rochdale Borough-wide housing in terms of the demolition of parts of College Bank. However, and I'll reiterate the point I made at the start, they are the main housing provider, social housing provider in the borough. They're often our route to building affordable homes. In their business plan, they plan on building 100 affordable homes a year. So when it's appropriate and the public agree with their plan and what they want to do, the council will support them in that. However, and I did make the point of the township, I was disappointed that RBH didn't come to support this document, given a big part of, not to this committee, the township, given a big part of what's going on will be the development of RBH properties. So I just want to make it clear now, the councils will not be helping RBH redevelop College Bank unless it is to retain the buildings and continue to provide social homes.
I was, to be honest, thanks for making that comment, Councillor Blundell, because I was actually going to make that comment myself later on about RBH not attending this evening. Obviously, when they're a very close partner with us in regards to delivering affordable living housing and affordable rented housing, not social housing these days, as they've made very clearly. But it is like you're saying, I think you've made that point very clear, that they do need to come to scrutiny and they do need to work with elected members, obviously, to push these supplementary planning documents forward, because it would be good to hear what their plans are. Because it's like you say, in your report, you've got mixed type of housing. Now, it's great to see mixed type of housing, but I've raised these concerns before that we need to be having numbers. And now I understand that you always say that we're not at that stage of having numbers, but it's always nice to actually see at the beginning of the process what sort of numbers we're looking at, what sort of estimates we're looking at, so we can actually move forward through that consultation with residents to actually deliver at the end an estimate around them actual numbers about what we're actually providing, what sort of affordable rented housing are we providing, what affordable housing are we providing. And the problem is, I think that's what residents get really upset about, is that it seems to be that nothing's given to them until the last minute, basically. And without RBH being here and actually saying this is the sort of funding that we're going to be getting moving forward, it's just not appropriate. To say that they're a cooperative mutual with us, it does wind me up a little bit, to be honest.
Sure, just to be clear as well. So this gives the council's powers.
Yes. No,
so these are the council's powers. And obviously we'll continue to work with RBH. But if we come to a point of disagreement, then we'll stop assisting. We'll change the policy. But at the moment in time, I think we want to support RBH in developing lower failings. It's the right thing to do, and we hope they do it at a pace.
Just a quick question for myself about it. Would there be any houses be demolished in this plan?
Yeah, quite possibly. I don't know the exact numbers. Paul, do you want to?
Yeah, again, if I may, Chair, I'm sure there would be an element of demolition because the areas involved have older housing stock and properties that I'm sure RBH would want to replace with more modern, suitable accommodation. So it will undoubtedly include elements of demolition, I think, and some phases have been brought forward already actually prior to the SPD through separate planning applications which involve demolition and replacement with new family homes. So, but again, there's no numbers at this stage, Chair.
But the issue is then again, when we're not, sorry, can I just come in, Councillor Blundell? The issue is when we're knocking down social housing in that area and it's not being replaced with social housing, there's no funding for it. It's affordable rented housing with no special rights for them social housing. Something I am very passionate about, as Councillor Blundell knows, but it's like you're saying, it is upsetting to see social housing being knocked down again.
The only thing I'd say is that we're not going to be knocking down huge swathes of estates here. It's not like the demolition of College Bank. Not that those people's homes are worth any less, but there is a balance to be struck in there in terms of this area is right on the doorstep of the town centre and is considerably underdeveloped. And, is the pain worth the gain is the question. There will be affordable homes being built. The homes are not going to be overly expensive given the location and the values of that you're going to get for those properties in those areas. So on balance, I'm like with you, it's the difference with College Bank is you're losing hundreds of units in one go, whereas this is incremental. And as I said, I think the pain is worth the gain. Nonetheless, people live in those homes, and I appreciate how they may feel about that. But inevitably, if you're going to be developing in town centres in brownfield areas, a lot that you've got to come against this again and again. So it's better to do it in a manner like this than kind of ad hocly.
I think it's like you're saying, especially you'll know the example again of Cocolt, basically, where there was lots of social housing knocked down, and what's on there now? Gleason's Homes, which is all affordable living housing. Now, a lot of people are upset on Cocolt about that because for the pure reason that their children can't get a social rented house on Cocolt anymore because they've been pushed out by affordable living homes, basically. Now, I'm all for affordable living homes, but the problem is we can't keep knocking down waves of social housing all the time and not replacing any of that stock because there's no funding there for it either. So what's the point in knocking it down? That's just me generally what I'm saying there, but I understand what you're saying at the same time. I'll probably agree to disagree on that point a bit.
I agree. No, just fundamentally, I agree that the housing market renewal type policy, which was a policy where they come in and demolish huge swathes of parts of council estates. But I wouldn't necessarily call this that. This is a very specific site about the town centre and about what we're trying to achieve in terms of regeneration. It's not about the demolition and rebuild of homes. It's about using that land better. So although I appreciate everything you're saying on that, I wouldn't tar what we're trying to do in Lower Fairlinge with that brush.
Okay, I'll bring in Councillor Bestford. Sorry about your wait.
Thanks, Chair. Just 3 comments on this. I mean, I really appreciate Councillor Blundell's clarity that this is not about college banks, but there was a lot of papers attached to this bit here, and a significant chunk of them was Appendix 1, which specifically goes into resident opinions about how they want College Bank to look. So can I recommend that also make a suggestion that for any of these kind of papers that you're putting out in the public domain, that you make it really clear, and if it's nothing to do with College Bank, then I don't think we should necessarily have that information about what residents feel College Bank should look like or what the future of it should be. The second point I'd like to make is that on page 110, there's a reference to, so Appendix 1 was page 56. On page 110, there's a reference to a 7.5% of the development sales value of the overall scheme. It's talking about the affordable housing contribution. What I would find really helpful when I'm understanding the context that these papers sit within is a breakdown of what the existing housing makeup is right now and what the potential breakdown would be going forwards. what I'm really interested in to know is that I don't know whether 7.5% is good or bad compared to what these units are going to be replacing. And I'd really like to understand a little bit more about how much social housing, how much affordable housing currently is there, and what that means going forwards. And the third point that I'd like to ask about is around the nature of affordability of the housing. I'm really keen that there should be no accusations leveled of social engineering around here in order to move different types of demographic around. But what I'm really keen about this is making sure that if you currently own a property in this area and you're offered some money for it because you're going to be having it demolished, is the affordable house that's going to be built in its stead something that is genuinely affordable to you for the sale of that property? I know that's been one of the major concerns with residents in College Bank. And I know that we're not talking specifically about College Bank here, but I'm really keen to make sure that whatever happens, anyone who currently lives in this area is able to currently still live in that area and isn't forced to move out just because they're either a social housing resident or they live in what is affordable housing to them, but might not be affordable housing under whatever system we're using going forwards.
So on the just to reiterate the point I made before, so this is a planning document that would, if need be, give the council the power of CPO. So a bit unlike College Bank, where RBH kind of have these people in a leasehold and they can say, accept this, or, you know, we'll throw you out, basically. The council, when it's using its powers as CPO, you know, they're our powers, they're not RBH's. So yes, this document would give us those powers to have those discussions with people. But Rochdale Council isn't in the business of turfing people out of the homes without, you know, giving them the option of something that they can genuinely afford. So I'm not, obviously, the council might change complexion. I might not be the cabinet member, or the obviously I'm actually not the cabinet member for housing that would move on to. But that's something that happens a bit further down the line, if you like. This document is more about, do we agree with the master plan for the area, and then gives us some powers to actually then go and implement it. What you're talking about is the actual implementation of it. And that discussion would kind of like happen at the time. What this document doesn't do is, once this is agreed, it doesn't mean we're then going to go and CPO these people's homes. We don't have to do that. It's just a planning document there that we can use if we want to.
Just to come back on that, I understand what you're saying about that, but in order for us to approve or otherwise of a master plan for an area, one of the most important things for me for this particular area would be to understand whether the master plan will mean any massive changes to people who live there already. So I think that actually having an indication about these numbers is going to be really important at the very earliest stages, which I can see we're at now with this, because I don't think many of us would want to approve any kind of master plan or anything like that if actually it meant wholesale clearing of people that live in there already. Now, I know that's not what you're suggesting, but I would like to see that kind of information in this kind of document.
I must admit, I think you put it a bit more eloquently than I've put it, Councillor Besford. But
I think the purpose of the I think we need to get back to the purpose of the document. So this isn't about, I mean, we don't even have to use powers of CPO if we want. That doesn't even have to happen. If we've got an idea of what we want in terms of, you know, densifying the area, the scale of it, this is the vision. And then we'll look to develop that. If like ideas come along and, you know, we do want to demolish certain blocks of housing, that will be a discussion and a point for them. But is it right that we want to develop this area to support the town centre? Is it right that we want to use land more efficiently in urban areas, etc.? That's what we're asked. That's what this document does. If we ever got to the point where we was then looking at CPO, there'll be a whole other raft of reports and things that are drafted. But this master plan it's a much higher level than what you're worrying about. It does set things in train, but if you was to worry about these types of details before any of these documents ever went out, none of them would ever get approved. This is too detailed for what this is about.
I respectfully, I mean, I really disagree that this is too detailed, and the reason why is because if we're setting aspirations for a master plan, we're setting out our vision for what we imagine this space to be like, then part of that aspiration is about the residents who are there now and the residents who might expect to be there in future. So I'd like to see some aspirational vision level statements or something like it, to use the kind of terms that you're talking about here, not specific detail, but I'd like to see a commitment in these master plan documents to make sure that the people that are there now will still be able to be there if that's what they choose.
Sorry, just before you come back, Councillor Blundell, I'd like to just come off the back of what Councillor Besford has said. We've only got to look at an example of what actually happened about 4 or 5 years ago, basically, when that SDP, sorry, I keep saying SDP, I mean SPD, sorry, pardon me. Yeah, it's
sounds like a Freudian slip to me.
Sorry, Ed, it's SPD, basically, when it came to Rochdale Township before going to Scrutiny or anywhere else. It's like you're saying, it involved College Bank, it involved Lower Failinge, and it was the exact same thing, and it basically included that we're going to be, basically that College Bank site, and it's going to be mixed type of housing, etc., and all that, with no figures in it. And then all of a sudden, a bit further down the line, it never came back to Township, but then all of a sudden, College Bank was being demolished after that. And that's I think that's the issue we've got there. I can understand what you're saying. It's about releasing that brownfield land so we can actually use it and actually get these powers to use it. And I can understand what you're saying there, but the issue is it's happened in the past. We're just worried that it's going to happen again.
Major difference that I pointed out, it's not happened in the past at the council. So what you're talking about is the way RBH have decided to treat the existing residents of College Bank, right? These are the council's powers. The council will not be behaving in a similar fashion as long as I'm around or other cabinet members are around. So the fears of the people that have been treated as such, this is not RBH. These are not RBH's powers to chuck people out of the homes. These are the councils, and we're not in the business of throwing people out of their homes. Now, obviously, CPO can involve the relocation of people, but we will take a much different approach. When you say it won't come back to Township, these things will come through the council structures. It's fully scrutinised. It has to come here. It's a completely different kettle of fish what we're talking about. So let's not get blindsided by the way RBH have treated people at College Bank, because we are not RBH.
So sorry, Chair. One more thing on this. So then I totally take on board what you're saying here. So I don't see why there would be no problem. I see there would be no problem at all then by putting in a paragraph into this document that commits the council in its planning decisions to make sure that the residents that are currently there will have the opportunity to remain there if that's what they wanted to do. I don't see why we couldn't just add that in straight away.
Well, it's a consultation, but we can. I don't know about I don't know the legalities around it. I don't know if Paul wants to come in on that.
Yeah, well, I think it's be helpful too, because ultimately this is a planning document. The document can't and wouldn't seek to get involved in individual rights of tenants or residents to stay in properties. And ultimately, as I said, this is a planning document, and it's RBH have separate responsibilities as a landlord to deal with the tenants and residents that are in those properties. I think it's our understanding that many of the properties in this area are already empty, but clearly that would be a matter if RBH were here that they could explain. But I've got to be clear that we can't put in an SPD that there's a right to rehouse existing or remaining tenants in any new properties. It's just not something you can do through a planning document, really. And I think that's where the relationship that John's talking about with RBH as a registered provider and landlord has a separate sort of responsibility to its own tenants to deal with that separately. And I'm sure they would say they've got a strategy in place to deal with that, really. And but we're not here to talk about that as such.
Just 1 second, Danny. I'll reiterate
just before you come in, Councillor Blundell, just to come back to you then, and Michael might be able to help us here as well, sorry, is as a scrutiny committee, we can make recommendations when it goes to Cabinet to actually go out for consultation. So that can be included in the report, can't it? Is that correct, Michael?
No, can I just quit?
No, John, 1 minute. Let Michael come in, sorry.
I think what we're looking at is a cabinet approval to go out for consultation. So whatever comes back as part of that consultation process will be then part a second decision whether to approve or to adapt or otherwise. I think as part of what cabinet determines, minutes from this meeting and any other element of the governance function that it's gone through, then yeah, of course, members of cabinet will take that into consideration, and the report also will reflect all of that consultation as we are required to do.
So basically, we're allowed as a scrutiny committee to put a recommendation in a report that goes to cabinet.
You can make a recommendation to cabinet as a scrutiny committee, yes.
That's fine. So we can make a recommendation from this meeting about Councillor Besford wanting to see the figures instead of the 7.5 figure, like he said, basically understanding what them figures mean and actually have them figures implemented into that part. Is that correct? We can do that, can't we?
You can make a recommendation that cabinet considers the inclusion of.
Yes.
That's what you can recommend.
Yeah, no, I thought we could. So that I understand that's not resolving the issue that Councillor Besford has, but that's the best solution from the scrutiny committee, isn't it? Technically.
Yeah, I mean, working with the portfolio holder to seek that those views are represented within the documents that ultimately planning make a decision on to consult, and then whatever considerations come out of those consultation responses prior to adoption.
That's fine. Do you want to come in, Councillor Blundell?
Yeah, so I don't actually agree with Michael's just said. I do, obviously, in terms of what's been said, but my understanding is this was here not as part of the processes to go out for consultation, but because I said that this is what I was trying to come in on, that it should go in front of you guys, because in many respects you've led the charge on College Bank. But the point I just want to reiterate at the start, this is not about those finer details, and a paragraph in the report isn't really going to help anything much. I mean, it's more about, do we want this area to see development in this area of affordable homes and it to, be a lot denser than it currently is? And I would say the answer is yes. When it comes to the more detailed stuff around everything we've been talking about, that will go through the council structures. The reason it didn't for College Bank is because College Bank is not part of the council. When the council's exercising its own powers, obviously that involves members. And you can have a cast iron guarantee, no matter who the council cabinet member is at the time, that this, will be open to full debate, it'll go to scrutiny, it'll go to cabinet. This is purely a planning document to say, do we want to develop this area? What kind of vision do we want? And it's got to be purposefully high level. This is not a detailed planning document, it's purposefully high level, and therefore we have to avoid that type of detail.
Can I bring in Councillor Zahir, please?
Right, I've been listening to your conversations, and what Councillor Besford just said, what's going to happen to those people who will be displaced. We already have a housing crisis. I received a complaint, Councillor Meredith, the ladies from your ward, because she couldn't speak English, so she phoned me. A single mom with 4 children applied to be rehoused in 2014 for a 3-bedroom house, and she's still waiting because that has gone up to 3 to 5-bedroom house. Do we have a 5-bedroom house in the borough to rehouse that family waiting from 6 years? I know we were talking high-level things and high-level planning, but we are not thinking about those people who are suffering. I know, with this COVID, what happened in deprived areas, why they suffered is because of overcrowding and waiting to be rehoused. If we carry on, we talk about mixed housing. I want a definition of that. Though it's a basic plan, right? It's going to tell us what we are going to do with that land. But I need the definition of that mixed housing, what it means for general public. I understand, you understand, what is this all document is about, the officers understand. But when you go to the public, to normal people, they don't understand all these high level plans and language and everything. They just understand that they need a decent house. But we need to think about that. We need to think about all those people who are suffering. If you carry on doing like that, I hate this word affordable now, because it didn't provide those houses which people are in need in our borough.
Now,
I think that whatever document, whether it's an initial document, whatever it is, whatever terms we are using, they should be clear that what they mean for the future. Even if it just says that this land will be used for housing, the housing which are going to be on this land should be clarified now, because I have left no belief now. In past 7 years, I haven't seen social housing much needed in our borough for the most deprived people in our borough. So
No.
I agree with what just Tom said, that we need to clarify what we are doing.
Now, what I'm actually going to say here, councillors are here, is probably what John is trying to say, is especially to do with this area of land, because we've done this, I've gone back to Cacolt again, I do apologise, but we're doing the same in Cacolt. The issue is there's no money for social housing. So there's money for affordable living housing, affordable rented housing. And that's what I'm actually going to praise RBH here, because RBH are actually getting that money for family homes, and they're doing 3 and 4 bedroom family homes majority. They're not doing single bedded flats anymore, really. And to be honest, I will praise RBH for the work they've done on Cacolt, and probably the work they're going to do in this area as well with building them sort of homes. Now, the problem is it's not RBH, it is the government in regards to there's no social housing money, so it has to be affordable. Now, I agree with what John's saying there. Now, the issue is what I'm trying to get at is that we just don't want to see our social housing stock deplete again, because it's like you're saying, probably in that area, it is two bedroom homes. It's not 3 and 4 bedroom homes. It's probably 2 bedroom homes that are maisonettes and stuff like that. Now, we don't want to lose that because there is a housing crisis. And the problem is if we lose sort of like homes like that, then they will have nowhere for people to live. So I agree with what councillors are here saying, but I agree with what Councillor Blundell's saying. Now, I think what the best thing to do from this situation moving forward is for actually put that recommendation in place. So when this does go to Cabinet, you actually get the recommendations from the scrutiny body that have actually scrutinised the report. Now, I'll bring in Councillor Blundell, but then I know Paul wants to come in as well. So
just so on this point to make, because there's 2 separate things going on here, and it's got confused. So I think on the point about what councillors are here saying, I completely agree with. You know, there's a serious problem with social housing, but we're not the social housing provider as a council, and the way the government allows, as Councillor Meredith, the chair's already said, the way the government set it up, we're not an area that is allowed to expand its house, so sorry, we can't get the cash for it. But what we can do as kind of like a separate policy is maybe look at, separate from this SPD, maybe look at when we're looking at compulsory purchase and master planning and the like, the council can have a policy on trying to rehouse people in and around that area. So what I can do is, rather than hold up this SPD or try and confuse it with what it's actually doing, the council can look at having its own policy on CPO and rehousing and those types of issues. That's all encompassing no matter where you are in the borough. So I'm happy to take that away as an action, but those issues don't relate to what this document's trying to do. And the worries that you've got around rehousing are to do with, you know, the way RBH has behaved towards certain tenants of College Bank, and it's certainly not how the council would be exercising its powers in this area.
Bring in Paul Moore now.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just going to try and perhaps deal with the same point that Councillor Blundell raised about trying to separate out the concerns of members in respect of RBH's policies and their relationships and the way they manage that with tenants, and just bring it back to the sort of key point of this document, really, which is about trying to set a framework to put a little bit more detail on policies in our core strategy, really, about guiding future development in a coordinated way. And fundamentally, it's about trying to add more detail around placemaking for lower failings. And it's not just about this issue, which I said I feel like we've deviated into RBH's responsibilities as a landlord, really, and the way they manage their tenants and communicate with the tenants. So for me, it's about coming back to the purpose of the SPD, about guiding and providing some principles for a coordinated approach to redeveloping this area, supporting future funding bids, and helping with land assembly where required, and giving a bit more detail to the policies we've got in our core strategy about regeneration of this area. So I think John set out a strategy to perhaps try and deal with it, but fundamentally this is a planning document, not a housing document, and it can't and isn't designed to get involved in detailed management of individual tenants and properties. And I think I just wanted to elaborate. I mentioned before about sort of empty properties. That was in the context of the earlier point around demolition. So our understanding is properties that they are looking to potentially demolish as part of this are already empty for the most part. So I thought that might be relevant just to clarify that point, Chair. Thank you.
One final note.
One minute. Michael wants to come in.
Yeah, I want to have the final word, Councillor. Something both you, Chair, and the portfolio have said just triggered a thought in my head. I think, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, that the housing strategy is due for renewal in 2022. Perhaps this actually opens up an opportunity for Scrutiny to put this on your work programme for next year, as in reviewing the housing strategy document as a policy document, which you can take throughout the year, which then would feed into the decision making by an adoption of that strategy in early 2022.
And that, I think that's a fantastic idea, Michael. And the thing I just wanted to end on is I will take away the concerns around rehousing, because I feel just as strongly as you do, but that's not what this document's about. So when we get once the consultation's over and the like, I'm happy to be involved, although I can't sit on the working group, but I'm happy to attend that working group to make sure that the housing policy for this area and the wider borough ensures that people who do sometimes have to be relocated are relocating in the vicinity of their home.
Right, Mark, did you want to come in? Sorry.
Sorry, yeah. I was just going to say, I mean,
thank you, Chair.
Mark, sorry, which Mark? Oh, sorry, I'll come in after Mark if that's okay. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So sorry. Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's a very brief point because really what I was going to say has now been covered by between Michael and Councillor Blundell. I mean, the point I was going to make is really in response to Councillor Bestford's comment about including a paragraph in a planning document. I think we need to separate out the role of the council as the local planning authority from the role that the council might choose to make in future decisions on non-planning related matters. So the idea of Michael around making that resolution elsewhere is separate from the document. Gives us the ability to come back to that when we are looking at if in the future we need to make that sort of decision. But it is a non-planning decision, and therefore it's not appropriate to include it in the document at this time. But there is still the opportunity to.
I completely agree. We've already touched on it, haven't we? I think we've come to that arrangement, haven't we? I think Mark is
that's fine, Chair.
Yeah, sorry, Danny. All I was going to say in support of Councillor Blundell's point is that this sounds more related to the housing strategy and the allocations policy. And I think that's something we could certainly have a conversation about. And having sort of Peter Maynard involved in those types of conversations is absolutely essential, because it does link into the homelessness agenda as well. So I think it broadens it out, and I recognise some of the concerns that some of the members mentioned, and I'm sure everyone has their own case examples. So I think that's possibly a separate conversation, Chair, we could have at a future meeting, but happy to take that offline, because it sort of crosses over two portfolios, as John's already said. Thanks, Chair.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I think what we've done is we've had a very detailed conversation. I think we've got some actions that have come out of this. Now, I strongly suggest is obviously, I agree, Councillor Blundell, it is a positive document. It is about releasing that land. It is about getting a plan for the area. It's about getting them 3 and 4 bedroom houses so people can move into them. Now, it's like you're saying, the issue we've got is to do with the, figures and stuff like that, which you're saying aren't going to be included. Now, the only point I really want picking up and putting through to a recommendation from Cabinet is what Councillor Blundell said about whether them figures that are actually being put on are actually positive figures. And it's like about actually having that maybe a bit more information if we put them questions forward to RBH, so that can be fed back into the scrutiny body and it can come back to scrutiny at that point. Does everyone agree with that? And we note the report.
One final thing, just because for the people listening, Danny, cast iron guarantee now, whatever the allocations policy is or the policy that comes forward for housing, in this area, the council are not going to simply be coming in and tipping people out of the homes and leaving them high and dry. That is not how the council plan on operating. Obviously, there will be difficult conversations and we're not always going to agree. But on Councillor Bestford's point about where people were left unable to buy a property due to the value of homes in College Bank and things like that, we as a council don't have the same. I don't think we would take the same view as RBH. We're a publicly accountable body, unlike RBH, and all this would come through the council structures for people to throw the 2p in, because again, we're a public body, unlike RBH. So I don't want anybody sat at home worrying that they're not going to have their say on what's going to happen. They will, and get in touch if you do have any concerns. But that's not what this document is about.
Thank you very much, John, for that guarantee. Right, is everyone happy to note that report? Yes. Right, let's move on to the next one. So is it your train station one now?
Yeah, which would look positive. Yeah, so the my head's all full of low failings now. So this one is another SPD or SDP, as you call them, Councillor Meredith. And it is essentially to support the Rochdale Corridor strategy, which is something I've been working on since I become a cabinet member, and I'm chuffed to bits to see it all coming to fruition. And this document essentially does exactly what it does in Lower Fairlands. It sets out the wider vision for the area. What are we trying to achieve? But it does it at an appropriate level. So this is kind of very strategic. Doesn't lay on too many details, but it does give the council, becomes the policy of the council. It's something that planners can refer to when we're trying to assemble land and the like. I think a couple of points to note. This will completely change the Milkstone area for the better. So this is highly unlikely to involve any CPO of housing or anything like that, but it will consolidate a lot of land in the area for the development of new types of housing. There'll be a lot of new public realm in terms of a park at Rochdale Station, where you've got the old platforms. You'll have better quality public realm out front, where we'll be removing some of the roads eventually. And the volume of housing in the area will increase a lot, providing a lot more footfall for the businesses and the like. Yeah, so I'll open up to questions because we've gone on a lot about SPDs. I think you know what they are now and what they do and what they don't do. But yeah, any questions on this? This is for me anyway, because this is the major station in the borough and it's going to be a big public square. This is the jewel in the crowd of what will be going on in Rochdale over the next decade or so.
Very, very quick comment. I just want to thank you for coming to Rochdale South Township in regards to this. I think
Well, it's a good job because Mark forgot to.
Yeah, true. Yeah, and to be honest, he did an all right job, Mark, as well. But he didn't sell it down the river anyway. He didn't sell it down the river. But no, I just wanted to thank you for coming to Rochdale South Township. You actually answered a lot of questions and a lot of concerns at that township in regards to what sort of mixed type of housing we're going to be in that area, and about keeping the diversity of the area, and actually keeping the keeping the businesses of the area, and actually building around the businesses to actually keep the old businesses but actually promote new businesses. And I know you did speak about the canals as well, and how we're going to improve them links to the canals. So I just want to thank you. I feel like we've already scrutinized. Well, I've already scrutinised you, so I won't go any longer. So I'm going to bring Andrew Kelly in first. Councillor Kelly.
Yeah, you say Andrew Kelly, and they expect an estate agent to turn up.
Yeah, sorry.
I've got quite a direct question. I don't suppose it's a conflict of interest, but there won't be any great secret that I'm a member and an audience member at the Curtain Theatre in Rochdale on Milkston Road, which is one of the kind of like, well, it's the only active bespoke theatre, if you like, in the township. I'm personally concerned, or need to raise the question at the very least, about the pedestrianisation of Lower Milkston Road, particularly with a view to a fact that there seems to be a bit of a grey area with the Nye Bevan car park and the possibility of development on that site. But more so, and it echoes what you just said, Danny, I'm not entirely sure that the closing of the through road, like Milkston Road, doesn't damage existing businesses. Whereas culturally and historically, that and I use the phrase in inverted commas, Curry Mile on Milkston Road, has been kind of a visitor attraction, if nothing else. And I'm really concerned that those businesses are going to suffer if there isn't some adequate through route parking, general kind of flow of traffic, whether that be foot flow or not, with the closure of the route at the other end. And I don't understand the logic of it. So I'd like some clarity on it if I can do, please.
Yeah. So a big part of this plan is to develop a car park at the front of the station. So in the long run, so parking will be enhanced significantly, because when you're speaking to a lot of the businesses and residents in the area, obviously it's very densely populated and an attraction, as you've said, Councillor Kelly. So there is plans to expand parking. When you say about the through route, closing off the through route, the aim of having the square, okay, yes, that is one artery point, but Mile Street and the back, it'll be really important to what happens at the front. So in many respects, we're kind of flipping the station in a way. So a lot of the traffic will be where Mile Street is and that area, and that's where people kind of see the through route, but the front will be focused around being a public square. So there won't be no through route. There'll be enhanced parking, and while achieving both of those things, you're still then going to get a really high quality public realm at the front at the tram stop, and a significant increase in housing.
No, I think maybe you're missing the point of the question, John. I get all of that, and I understand the development around the train station, and I'm aware of what's being trying to achieve. My question is directly: is the plan to close Milkstone Road as a through route from Drake Street? Because the current plans say that there's going to be a pedestrianised area at the lower end of Milkstone Road at the junction with Tweedale Street.
No, so that is. So that's not going to shut at all. No, the closure is the public square at the front, and then when you have the new building, if we do end up with a new building, where you've got, when you walk out of the station, you look left. There's then some streets that interact with Milkstone Road. Obviously, if you redevelop that area, some of those streets will need reconfiguring, but there'll be. Like as I've just said, that'll continue to be a through route, and there'll be enhanced parking because of it. That's a big aim of this plan, is to boost the number of people who can stay and dwell in Milkstone, both on foot, pedestrian, and by car.
Well, I've got to be honest with you. I've misread the report, and it's misleading if that's the case. Because, and I will find it. I'll concede to somebody else making a point. I will come back to you, and I'll put it in the chat. But from what I can tell with this SPD, the lower end of Milkston Road is going to be pedestrianised and close to no through traffic, and that would include the area around the Curtain Theatre, the mosque, and what we used to call the Corporation Pub if it's still there on the corner.
Mark, I'm not talking.
No, Councillor. I think Councillor Kelly's right. Clearly, that's what it says. But the intent is what the intention is, and the intention certainly isn't to close it off. We want to keep access to those businesses and to the theatre. Councillor Blundell made the point that we will want to put a lot more parking in that area, but the comment about pedestrianising it is really to improve the access to the public square and encourage more footfall through into that area and to those local businesses. There may be some changes to the traffic flows, but the intention, Councillor Kelly, is not to close it off completely. We obviously need to keep access and servicing access to those businesses. It'd be really helpful actually if we could also set something up with the theatre. I think we may have. We are contacting some local businesses down there, and the theatre might be one of them, actually, Councillor Kelly. But we could perhaps take that offline and have a separate conversation with them.
Councillor
I'd be happy to do that, Mark. I think we just need to remind fellow elected members that the current mayor is actually one of the trustees at the theatre, so I don't think we're going to have a problem having a line of communication there.
Yes, we know that.
I've read it as I've seen it in the report. It says that there's going to be a pedestrianisation and closing of the through traffic, and I'm trying to find out as to why we think that's a good idea.
So that, like I said, it's more in relation to the roads from outside the station interact with Milkstone Road rather than cutting Milkstone Road off completely. Although we will check the wording, I'll take the point, but that's not the intention. Certainly, when I've read the document, I didn't take that away, but I accept other people might. So I'll speak to Mark offline and make sure that that's changed, if not, or made clearer.
That's fine.
I'll find it for you when I.
I think it's something that we'll be able to resolve, obviously, with the theatre and and basically the actual plan going forward. Councillor Blundell said he'll take that forward. So I'll bring in Councillor Besford now.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to again thank Councillor Blundell and Mark and everyone else involved in this, because I think this kind of really ambitious plans and proposals is the kind of thing that really interests and will really excite residents, and certainly I think the plan to make the plans that I've seen here around this station look absolutely fantastic. I'm quite excited to see that change and that link, and I'm also pleased to see the thought that's gone into additional commuter parking and even the relationship between that part of the town centre with the area that's maybe the sort of more recently developed area around the new leisure complex and around there. I'm looking forward to seeing other SPDs come through for the rest of the station master plan at the moment. But I just wanted to say thanks for having such a comprehensive document in there. I'm quite excited to see it come forwards.
Just to say about Tom, I think especially in relation to GMSF and everything, one of the things the rail corridor strategy does is it puts a real focus on brownfield development and infrastructure led. And I think that, a lot of this isn't viable per se, and it'll need public subsidy. But because we've set out these ambitions and goals and we've got it in a public strategy, but also as part of these SPDs, when we're going to, funders, whether it's GMCA, Homes England, whoever, we're in a much better position to get funding to help make these things happen. I take a great deal of pride when you see the stuff going on at GM. The corridor strategy keeps going up again and again as the archetypal, this is how you should do something. And that's because it's a really strong strategy. These plans are going to help make it happen. And I think that normally when something's released, I get put under the cosh. I get people ringing me up saying, why has this happened? Bloody hell.
Whereas with these, I'm actually getting a lot of positive feedback from people contacting us, businesses seeing behind it, residents seeing behind it, people, in professional circles think it's a good idea, and that's because it genuinely is a good piece of work.
I think just to come back on that, we recognise there's a housing crisis, and we need to provide more social, affordable, and other types of housing. And these kind of brownfield development plans, I think, are some things that I'd really support, and I think are really strong. Right across the borough, this kind of focusing of making the best use of land around our major transport hubs are really important. And I would hope that they'll be welcomed by everyone, and the opportunity to feed in at this stage is something that I really value as well.
Sorry, just to come in there, I wasn't going mad. It is on page 21 of the document. It's the second bullet point on page 21. It just states pedestrian only on Lower Tweedale Street and Milton Road between Tweedale Street and William Street. Sorry, pedestrian only on Milton Road between Tweedale Street and William Street. So it is that. I know you were shaking your head there, Councillor Zahir, but it definitely is that in the current plan.
I've just received a message from Mark, basically saying that he'll take it away and clarify the wording, but the intention is not to pedestrianise. The intention is to pedestrianise only those areas closest to the planned square. So he said he'll take it away and clarify them words for you, Councillor Kelly.
Just not well on that. There will be some changes to roads between Milkstone Road and the public square. Because obviously if you're building and developing, but the aim isn't to have Milkstone Road pedestrian only, there'll still be cars allowed on there. And
okay, John, I accept what you're saying, but in black and white, that's what it says in the plan.
That's why we're consulting.
Can I just interject as chair, please? What is it? We've said that we'll take it away. The officer's taken that. The officer's taken that away. So they'll get clarification on that. Okay, and we'll leave it there. So Mark Robinson wants to make a comment, please.
Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Chair. What I was going to say is probably for the next, before we finalise the version of the plan, what we could do on that point is to clarify, probably with a plan in the document, just to make clear which of the areas we're actually talking about closing for traffic for pedestrianising and which are the ones that we're not. So we can make it clearer by plan, I think, Councillor Kelly, rather than words.
Yeah, I think I'm going to say I've just looked at it myself. So I just looked at Lower Tweedale Street, and you could see how that links with the station gateway without having to pedestrianise Milkstone Road. So I think it's a wording issue rather than that's certainly not the intent. And as I read it now, looking at a map, I see something different. So that's not to be awkward. That's just I don't see it that way. So I think the best thing to do is make the document clearer.
That's fine. It's something that's going to be taken away then, so we can resolve that outside. Okay. Any other questions at all?
We'll put it into the final version, Chair.
Yeah, that's fine. Any other questions at all? Councillors are here, please.
I'd just like to make a comment. If that would have been the case, I would have been the first person to oppose it, to close the Milkstone Road, but that is not the case. I think we just need me to make it a bit more clearer when it comes to the wording, so that people don't get confused to it. I'm really excited about this project because from past some time we have seen that the Water Tweedale Street and Milkstone Road was really busy business-wise, and I don't think that there is any shop left empty in that area. So most of the residents and the businesses are pretty excited about it and are supporting it, as Councillor Brundle has said before. And we hope that the consultation is out, and we hope that it will get positive feedback and more ideas to make it better. And because the thing is, it's a package. It's not just going to enhance the Milkstone area. It's going to enhance the town centre, because I always used to feel really depressed, when you're coming out of the train station and you're expecting the beautiful town of Rochdale, which is always on the photographs and in the writing.
Councillors are here.
Yeah, you don't see that, and I'm seeing it happening now. And people will actually see that town, which somebody is coming from outside is expecting to see in it with this project. Thank you very much for everybody who's involved in this project.
Thank you very much, councillors are here. Is there any other questions at all? No.
So I've just read, just to point out, so I've just read a different part of the document, and I read it as Andy Kelly said. Sorry, Councillor Kelly's read it. So it definitely needs to be made clearer. So I now take his point.
Great.
I now take his point completely, and I'll make sure that happens with Mark.
That's fine. Any other questions, comments? No. Thank you very much, and we note the report. So moving on to the next item. It's like 9 o'clock now. So we've got two other items. We've got the Neighbourhood Directorate report of Q3 for neighbourhoods and economy. Do you want to give us a few brief highlights, and that's it? And then I'm sure that people have already read it. So if anyone wants any questions, just ask it straight after your highlights. Is that okay, Councillor?
Yeah, that's fine, Danny. If I set off then, given the lateness of the hour, I'll sort of probably just ask members to take the report. All I would say is that there's reference to COVID quite a bit in the report, and I think the reason why some of that sort of the bar chart or whatever it's called, the pie chart, sorry, is purple. There's more purple than we'd expect in that, is because things are just taking a bit longer. But I suppose some of the highlights, particularly, I mean, we already have been to Corporate O&S Committee to talk about the other half of the directorate on Monday. This is the other half, which affects these areas. And, we've got such a combination, I think, of things. So if you look at the report that highlights the work that's been done on the Boundary Commission work, the work that's been done that we heard today about the climate change, so there's some big ticket items that we have, I think, managed to progress, maybe not as quick as we would want to do. The census that we've been involved in, progressing, some pretty big things this year, as well as dealing with some of those other issues that members are more aware of around crime, disorder, cohesion, and I could go on. There's a load of stuff in here. I'm pretty confident that the majority of the purples we should be able to complete on track by the end of March, and that, of course, will be subject to further discussion when it comes back at Q4. But I've got to say, given the amount of time that officers within neighbourhoods have been dealing, particularly at the sharp end of COVID, I think that, and I maybe would say this, wouldn't I, as the director, I would say that, the staff have worked, tirelessly to try and keep on top of some of these areas, as well as having their hands in the fire on the COVID pandemic. So I'm more than happy to take any questions, but I'll ask members to take it as read rather than go through any of the details. Chair, thank you.
The only issue I've got is the 25% on the census stuff to do with communication, obviously through schools and stuff like that. Is obviously with it coming up, is that going to be sped up a bit?
Yeah, again, through you, Chair. Obviously, with this being Q3, it reports what the activity was back in December. So I know that I've seen various reports now about what's happened since then, and I can maybe send a more up-to-date note round to members, just to let you know where we are on the census at the moment. But certainly work has been accelerated quite considerably since this report was written. So I'll make sure that's circulated round, Chair, if that's of interest to members.
Yeah, that's fine. I think looking at your purples, it's only because reports haven't been wrote more than anything else. It looks like you're doing the work, it's just the reports haven't been wrote. Does anyone have any questions at all? No? Are we happy to move on to the Economy Directorate then? Yeah. Is it Mark or is it Damien?
It is me initially, Chair.
Is it a double team?
Thank you. Yeah, as always, basically, it's the quarterly performance report from the Economy Directorate. Members will note the report and the appendices attached, which includes plan update as well for information. Similar to quite a few of the objectives have actually been achieved already through the year. Now we're in end.
Mark, unfortunately,
you'll note from the report
your signal's not the greatest. We keep cutting out.
I think we should go back to the last item and open up the super fast broadband item that was in there.
Damien, are you happy to step in?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what Mark was trying to say, I think that we lost him now, is that most of the items are on track. I think, as you did with the last item, I was just going to suggest that we open it up to questions given the time. I'm sure members are all desperate to get off the meeting. So, and we have got one hopefully short item to cover under the next agenda. So, I guess I wonder if Mark's VPN might have gone. But whilst he tries to rejoin, is there anyone who wants to ask anything? I'll do my best to answer questions.
I think looking at it again is literally, you've been doing the work. It just looks like that the reports haven't been wrote again, to be honest. A lot of it's waiting for a report, basically, looking at it. And it looks like that the officers have been doing the more important work during this period of time. That's what I get a sense of, but I don't know if other members sense that when they've read it. But has anyone got any questions on any of the reports, on any of the outcomes that are there? No? Because I don't, there's nothing particularly jumping out at me that there's something going disastrously wrong there, to be honest, when I've read it. So I'm happy to close the meeting at this point, if members are happy then. So I'd like to thank everyone for
sorry, we have a private item to follow after.
Yes, I know, yeah, but I'm closing the public meeting.
Thank
Is that
you.
all right?
Yeah.
Sorry. So to clarify, I'm closing the public meeting. So therefore, I'd just like to thank everyone, obviously, for the last 2 years that they've given me. I'm probably not going to stand again as a scrutiny chair. I've got more things going on in my life. I'm expecting a new baby, so I think I want to concentrate more on my family time. So I just want to thank everyone for the last 2 years you give me, and then before that the year before that as well. But no, thank you very much. So I'm happy to close it on YouTube now.